Well, hello, people of Defend the House, and welcome back to another big Roundup podcast. It has been a hot minute since we did this. I think almost 6 months?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and the last chat,
Jeez.
we covered, a game that I would say was quite contentious and had a lot of talking points in different aspects, and that was The Last of Us Part 2. And luckily today, we don't have anything like that. Smooth sailing from here on out.
The only controversial game we have to talk about is Bug Snacks.
Yes, that really ruffled some feathers in the gaming community.
Yes.
Got pulled from the PlayStation 5 store for dark humor and all that such.
Mm-hmm. You can force feed Gramble. No wonder they pulled it.
Yeah, that game was disturbing.
That's like a war crime.
But you guys are probably caught on that this is the highest form of comedy, which is sarcasm. It is time for Cyberpunk 2077, and also probably some PlayStation 5 chat. We talked about it on our podcast. Gonna plug it now. Defend the podcast on Spotify, Podbean, and stuff. Put that down below.
Places.
If you like these long chats, you will like those chats because they're also long, and we kind of just talk as we're playing different stuff. We've discussed our adventures trying to get our hands on those consoles and early impressions, so if you want some of that chat down below. But after Cyberpunk, if we have the energy, we'll talk about the couple of main games that came in the PlayStation. Demon's Souls.
I think they'll be in the title.
Yes.
I'm not sure which ones they'll be right now. Demon's Souls and Bug Snacks, and then who knows what else.
Mm-hmm.
There were a fair few games out, but...
Yeah, surprisingly.
Yeah.
But we've got a long way to go before we get there.
Oh my god.
Cyberpunk 2077.
It finally came out.
It did. Congrats, Sede. Well done, you got it out.
I guess.
We can't really get into the proper conversation until we've had the pre-conversation about the elephant in the room. We have to say that me and Jameson both played Cyberpunk in what I would call is the most ideal situation currently, which is on a high-end PC.
On a very high-end PC.
Yes.
With the graphics cards no one can buy.
Yeah, and it would be nice to get to a point in the review where we are just talking about it within that context. But before we get there, we do have to talk about the unfortunate events that happen to people who aren't fortunate enough to have those kinds of rigs. And it's a weird conversation to have for us, since we weren't really there in the pits with those guys. We weren't in the trenches. And it took a couple of days.
And it is also still ongoing.
Yeah. And the weird thing was, because we played it at midnight on the launch.
Yeah.
The first impressions, I don't want to jump ahead into the first impression was like, this game is a little rough. Like, the performance for me was worse than you because of my CPU, and I was seeing a couple of bugs. But it really took like 2 to 3 days before the news started rolling out about the last-gen console stuff, mostly waiting on those Digital Foundry videos.
Yeah, which was deliberate on CD Projekt's part.
Yeah, and obviously, with their past history, I never would have anticipated anything like this.
No.
Maybe that's naive. Over the last couple of years, we've seen some very high-esteemed video game companies kind of fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
But I think CD Projekt really did earn a level of trust, which I wasn't really thinking like something like this could happen. I think we all knew that last-gen stuff was going to be a little bit sketchy.
We definitely spent the last 2 years joking about how bad the last-gen versions are going to be, but we really didn't anticipate it to be what it was, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't think I will ever forget the moment where I was sat at my computer and you sent me the Digital Foundry video of the Xbox One footage. God. I couldn't fucking believe it. I don't think I've ever seen a worse port of a AAA game in my entire life.
It's hard to say.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, if there are similarly, but I can't. Nothing's coming to mind.
There's been buggier games, Fallout, Andromeda, obviously. There's been No Man's Sky, which I would say is worse for not delivering on what they promised, even more so than Cyberpunk. But when it comes to just a port, it's usually the PC boys that get the bad end of the stick.
It has been historically, for the last few years. You get big messes like, what was it, Batman Arkham Knight, that was pulled from the store for like 5 months because the PC port was so bad.
Yeah.
But console ports, like...
But it doesn't happen to consoles.
They're definitely not great, especially the later you get into a generation, the worse. The third-party stuff tends to get rougher as time goes on, whereas the first-party, aka just the Sony games, tend to get smoother because they just get better at working with the hardware. But console... You'll see it and be like, oh, it drops, maybe down to below 1080p, and, some games definitely chug frame rates.
They find a compromise, and the compromise works, but it just isn't that flattering sometimes.
No, they're still, like, reasonably functional, but not great, but, they're I don't know if I would say acceptable, like, for me, but...
Yeah.
They're tolerable, maybe is the way to say it. And I mean, Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, man, like what?
I mean...
on Earth.
You can't even recreate it on a PC. Yeah. Like, I tried... So, we just decided to do a little joke, goofy thing for the beauty video. And I was like, okay, I could take someone else's footage, or I could just try and recreate it as best I can. Recreate console footage as best I could. And I dropped every setting to low, set my game to render at 720p, and then turned on DLSS Ultra Performance. So I don't even know what resolution it's at. It's like probably like 240p or something. And it still looks better than the Xbox version.
Yeah, that is...
I had to record it at 10 FPS, and it still looks better than the Xbox version.
And this is still the most, the most prominent platforms in the world. The base PS4 and the base Xbox One. And, there's a lot of PS4 Pros and Xbox One X's out there. But
for sure.
Like a lot of people, like millions and millions of people on those platforms.
Like tens of millions, yeah.
And
that's why they released it, right? I mean, that's the reason it came out on last gen, was because they wanted to make money, which is like, okay, it's fine. That's pretty standard. You want to release it where all the people are, but you gotta release a version of the game that is playable. Functional. So I'm sure everyone knows already, but like they deliberately didn't let anyone see the console versions before release. They just said it runs surprisingly well. That was the CEO that said that on last-gen consoles. And everyone was just basically taking it on blind faith that it would be okay. I mean, they showed a little bit of footage of it running on the on the Series X and the PS5 in back compat. And those versions looked, they looked in that sort of acceptable realm, I think. And it seems like they are relatively, at least in terms of visuals and performance, in that acceptable area. And then, the reviews, man, the whole review situation for this game was just so weird in general, honestly. Yeah. They sent out PC versions for review to quite a few outlets, but the PC version that they got wasn't the version of the game that anyone was ever going to play, because there was a huge day one patch that hit when it went live, and so it was like extra buggy for reviewers. So like the reviews are sort of redundant. All the release day reviews feel like kind of redundant in a way, because it's like they're talking about all these bugs, and I mean obviously there's lots of bugs, but it was like a different state of the game, which is already strange to me, I think. And then there was not a single mention of the console versions because no one played them. And I don't know, I don't know, it seems weird to me that you would run a review when you haven't played the main platforms that people will play it on.
You gotta get those clicks though. You can't not post a Cyberpunk review.
I get it, I get it. So be it. But then, yeah, it released on consoles with no one knew what it was, and then, oh my god. It really is just extraordinary. And then, so, obviously, it was so bad that the most shocking thing ever happened.
Yeah.
Which was Sony pulled it from sale off of PSN, and it is still not back.
Wow.
That was like... When was that? That was probably 10 days. Was that even maybe 2 weeks ago? I don't remember exactly. I think it was a week after release. I think it was like the Thursday or Friday. So I think it was like almost 2 weeks ago now. And it's still not back. And I don't know when it will come back.
Probably shouldn't come back. Unless it's for the PS5.
It's pretty shocking that just how unfinished the console versions are.
Yeah, it should be illegal. I don't think it technically is.
No, because false advertising and all these things are like really lax, and I don't understand why they are that way. You know, I agree. It shouldn't be allowed. And I mean, Sony clearly agreed as well. They were like, fuck this. Though I think part of the reason Sony might have pulled that is because CD Projekt was like, please contact the platform holders for refunds.
Yeah, that was
You're going to get a refund. And then Sony is like, well, we don't have a refund policy because we're shitty. Unless you're in the EU where we're like legally obligated to give you decent customer support. And then I think all the refund requests probably made them just say, okay, fuck this. We're just going to pull it from, and then also refund everyone that asks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what sort of laws govern that sort of stuff. You know, you would think that Sony and Microsoft would have more strict policies about what is allowed on their platform.
Yeah,
I would,
there was, like,
if I was them.
rumors that the certification process was skipped over because it's CD Projekt. But who knows how much that is true.
There were threads that talked about, like Twitter threads that talked about what certification actually is for these consoles, and it is not like a seal of approval. It's more like, does the game boot?
Oh, Jesus, okay.
Yes or no, right? It's very basic, like, functionality stuff like that, and that's all that has to pass.
Okay.
So, but, like, not to encourage any company to be more like Apple, but, you know, a little curation, a little oversight of your platform, I don't think is a bad thing.
Yeah.
When you get something... Like, Microsoft had the co-marketing for this. Like, Microsoft was the co-marketer for this game. They closed out their E3 conference with the Cyberpunk announcement in 2018. You know, you would think Microsoft would look at the console version, because, like, it's not like they wouldn't have known, right? Surely. Someone at Microsoft saw the and they were like, oh, whatever, this is fine. It'll get patched quickly.
I don't get how this happened. It has to go through at least like a few people's hands, right?
I would think so. I would hope so. And it's just, you know, I mean, it's obviously all on CD Projekt for thinking that it was fine to release it this way. But there are also, I would have thought there were other like roadblocks that would have caught this stuff and said, no, you can't release this game in this state on our platform.
And also just the decision-making process of this. I would put wanting to know why this decision was made to release the game in this state up there with why Dr. Disrespect was banned on Twitch. It's like up there with that level of mystique, where you can guess, like, money pressure, Christmas. It always comes back to money somehow.
It's always about money.
It's always about money, but it can't have been from the people invested in the company, because, you know, it's been horrendous for them and they've lost, like, all their not lost their investments, but it's, you know, dropped like 60%.
Market value has plummeted,
to the point where they are, some of them, you know, this could just be like clickbait, and like when it comes to lawsuits, they go through so many steps that the journalists jump on it the fucking first sniff they get of this stuff because it's good clickbait. But, you know, there's talk about lawsuits from those people specifically who invested in the company, and now it's plummeted in value.
I believe a lawsuit has already been filed on behalf of shareholders in the U.S. I think, I'm not sure, because I mean, it's the U.S. they love suing people.
So if it's not from the big money people who own stakes in the company, They were like, someone made this decision.
It's a publicly owned company or publicly traded company, and has been for a very long time, honestly. Since like 2008 or something, after The Witcher 1 was kind of a disaster financially. I think the original story with The Witcher 1 was they tried to make a console version and it almost bankrupted them, and then they had to go public to recoup all the lost costs on making The Witcher 1 for PC or for consoles or something like that. So yeah, but I don't know, like it definitely is a money decision by people high up, the CEOs somewhere. But what is the money like what caused the money decision? I don't know. Maybe they were out of money, like this game is clearly been through development hell and is like absurdly expensive.
It does seem like a desperate decision because...
And I swear there were like rumblings last year that they were running low on cash because of the development cost for this game. Like they originally wanted to release it last year. The internal like targets were last fall release.
Yeah, that actually might be the only thing that's starting to line up.
Maybe they were just like, fuck.
Maybe they
We're
knew.
running out of money.
They're like, let's just launch. It would be a disaster. No Man's Sky has come back. Maybe we can just do that process and we can actually survive.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe that makes sense. Yeah. I'd love to know, though, because fucking hell.
Yeah, so, but like, it's not just the console versions of the game that are unstable and unacceptable. It's like the whole game was not ready to come out. Not just in terms of bugs. Like, and I mean, I have to say, like, I didn't have much... Like, there were lots of small, very peripheral things, and there was a period of time sort of in the middle of my playthrough where everything was... It was like a lot of bugs, but then the last like 30 or 40 hours were... I barely had anything. So, like...
Yeah.
But it's not just bugs, it's also just like the entire product needed more time.
Yeah. You can tell in, like, I'm not going to skip ahead, but there are like fundamental areas which are not done.
I would say like almost every part of the game outside of visuals and audio and like voice acting,
trigger, so
yeah, that's true. Some like the footsteps never play. So outside of visuals, basically every piece of the game there are varying scales of like, oh, this feels not quite fully finished.
Sometimes more than just not quite finished, just like really not done.
Yeah. Which we'll get to. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, they just like it's. I was gonna say like it's sad, but I mean it's not. I shouldn't feel that way because like CD Projekt is a giant company and their entire existence has always been to make money, like every company is. Like
it is sad,
but it is still sad because
not for the corporations.
No.
It's more for the fact that after a reasonably quiet year of gaming, and obviously a shitty year, I think everyone just kind of wanted Cyberpunk to be a moment. And I wanted Cyberpunk to be a moment.
And it has been a moment. Just
it has.
Type of moment. Yeah.
But, a video game celebratory zeitgeist is like a special occasion. You don't get many of them, You only get a couple a generation. And... It was almost kind of like quiet and uncomfortable playing this game. I felt like you were the only person I could talk to because most people just didn't have the ability to play it at a reasonable state. And it was like, well, I'm having some fun with this thing, but no one else is even playing it. And it's just like, how am I playing Cyberpunk 2077 and it's quiet? It was such a weird time.
Or the only discussion was just like everyone raging, and it's like,
yes, there was no one
not
really talking about the
interested
game.
in engaging with that.
I understand, but
sure, yeah, to an extent, I understand. But I it is sort of sad because Witcher 2 and 3 are, well, even The Witcher 1. I never played The Witcher 1 all that much, but they have a very good track record, and it's depressing. It's not sad, it's depressing. It's depressing to watch a company that spent 15 years building up its reputation as a trustworthy, consumer-focused developer that wanted to make great games for people, tank their entire fucking 15 years of reputation building in a day.
Yeah, it is.
And it wasn't like they were forced to do that. It was self-inflicted completely. Mm-hmm. And it's just too bad because, you know, The Witcher 3 is like the holy grail of gaming in terms of like the way people revere it, right?
Yeah.
And the way people just, you know, you look at Steam, I looked at it the other day, it has like 500,000 reviews on Steam, overwhelmingly positive. And it's like, I don't know if there's ever been a game that's gotten so many positive reviews.
Mm-hmm.
And then Cyberpunk was hugely hyped for so long. I mean, there were bad decisions in announcing it when they did, because it didn't actually enter development until after The Witcher 3 was finished, which was like 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. So, but like, it's just a bummer to see them go from The Witcher 3 to a complete clusterfuck.
Yeah.
And tanking all, and it is sad to see so many people disappointed by the game.
100%.
And I mean, I am disappointed by it, but I also had I also like Cyberpunk quite a bit. So like,
yeah, which is also another sad aspect is the more you play of this game on a nice PC, the more parts of it you see actually potentially reaching that lofty like expectations you had in your head.
Yeah, and
there are
a lot of
moments
things
in this game that reach those like crazy things we imagined when we saw the trailers, and you see that spark of like, holy shit, they actually potentially were on track to make this thing come to life and happen. But yeah,
and they probably still will. And if they don't, like, the modders will pick up the slack that anything that doesn't get there in the next 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's a bummer because there's so much like artistry and passion in the game as well that you can feel. There's like so much care put into a lot of things, and it's all of that care is let down by they just didn't have enough time. They just didn't get it finished. And they've been open about, like, they had the, you know, Jason Schreier posted a little summary of like the all hands meeting that happened a week or two ago where the CEO was grilled by the employees, and everyone was like, we told you it wasn't ready to ship. And, you know, one of them was like, what's your thoughts on like forcing a product out the door and that product is about corporate greed or something like that, which is an amazing question. Nice. Just like, bless that person.
What a ballsy man. I respect it.
You know, I mean, it's still definitively like all of the great things that are great in The Witcher 3 are mostly present here, and there's a lot of great stuff here. But yeah, it just needed, at bare minimum, it needed 4 months of bug polishing. Yeah. Ideally, though, it needed another year to bring everything together.
I'd say yeah, for sure.
Which we'll get into, and that's too bad. And it's especially sad just because like the developers knew that. All the people that made the game didn't want it to come out, but the people that run the company did, and that it's really
imagine just knowing that like for months at a time and seeing the world anticipating this feverishly with too much hype to, you know, even cope with the product coming out as people expected it to. And then they know how it's going to land and just dreading that. Like, the anxiety must have been awful.
And to think that they wanted, like, it to release in April. Yeah. You know, part of that Schreier piece, I think, was that the CEO said in January or February of 2020 that the game was finished and complete and it was just in polishing mode. And that was apparently complete bullshit. Mm-hmm. And the employees were like, what are you doing? Like, so, I mean, the fact that they thought it was going to come out in April speaks to... It just seems to me like they've been planning to release it underbaked for a while now, it seems like. Yeah. Like, they would just... For whatever reason, I don't know, maybe, like I said...
Why did they even delay it to December? Like, what was the point of that?
I have to imagine it was because 3 weeks before that, the console versions were literally unplayable.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
And then they were like, this is the best we can get it to. I don't know. So it's a really unfortunate situation for a game that has a lot of pretty neat, pretty good stuff going on. And it could have been pretty incredible. And I think with these free DLCs, patches, expansions, and then mods in 18 months, I'm really excited for what Cyberpunk can become with more time. And that's not to say that I don't think it's bad, or like right now. Parts of it are a mess, but I played 100 hours of it in 3 weeks, so it was obviously doing something right. So yeah, it's basically this entire discussion has to be caveated with we played it on very expensive gaming PCs and had pretty much the best possible experience you could have with it at launch.
Remember that context, because I don't want to have to be saying like, oh, the worst part of the game is this, except for the, I don't want to have to keep doing that.
No. So yeah, take that and store it in the back of your mind.
Yeah. This review is under the context of the best possible scenario as of now.
Yeah. And like I said, I was pretty lucky. I never had a single crash. I've
had one crash.
I never had anything game breaking, I don't think. I don't remember.
I've had a couple of quests. I've had 2 quests that broke, but it was just like a reload and then like
okay. I might have had that once or twice, and I would just quick save and reload right where I left off.
I've had no broken quest lines that aren't remediable.
Yes.
The game's pretty generous with saving, and you can just really quickly save in the game, and you should probably do that because you never know what's going to happen in this game.
Yeah. They, it's a PC game. It's a PC open world RPG, so F5 is quick save.
Yes.
That's just like a default for all these games, and I've been doing that for a long time. I'm just gonna hit F5. I'm just gonna hit that again. I've been doing that for 10 years, so it's nothing new. And I will say the last sort of thoughts on the bugginess of it. I mean, not that it won't come back up probably, but it is not the buggiest game I've played by a long shot. I played Mass Effect Andromeda at launch, which was and still I think is the most unfinished, buggiest thing I've ever played. Anthem is not far behind. Obviously, Fallout 76 exists or existed in the state. There have definitely been and also Fallout 4 was far worse than this for me as well. Fallout 4 felt like it was going to explode at any time. Like every single time you do the stupid loading screen from outside in the world into a dungeon or whatever, into a building. Every single time I used a door in Fallout 4, like I would save right before because it felt like the whole game was going to explode when I used that door. And and I remember dropping to like I distinctly remember I had a good GPU for Fallout 4 at the time. It was like a 980 Ti or something. And I distinctly remember finding a spot that was under a bridge where nothing was it was literally like the dead end under a bridge, so you can't see anything. It's just concrete. And I was running at like 20 FPS.
Yeah, Jesus.
So, there have been far, far buggier games that I have experienced. Not saying that, I'm sure other people like our poor Andy, our friend, had, I think he counted like 35 or 40 crashes.
Yeah, on the PlayStation 5.
On a PlayStation 5 in the span of 35 hours. So it's 1 an hour, which is like, that's staggering. So yeah, that should just to contextualize the bugginess of it. I think it was all pretty minor, and I think it definitely undermined parts of it often.
Yeah, I was gonna say the only time it ever really bothered me was during main missions. The main missions have some very nice character moments and some cinematic moments. And sometimes you'll be doing something and a character would be talking and they'd be like just facing the wrong way. And it's
I had that with Rogue once.
That was with Rogue as well. It was on the boat.
Yeah, she's just like facing a wall and it's like, Rogue, we're over here.
And then there's like an impact noise where she punches the guy, but she doesn't do anything. And I'm like, oh, come on, man.
Yep, yeah. And I would have, I play with subtitles off always. I never turn subtitles on because I hate them. And I would have subtitles turn on sometimes.
Yeah, me too.
It's during the transition, whenever you transition from like a first person state to like I'm controlling the tank and someone is speaking, or if you reload a save while someone is speaking, that line of dialogue is stuck on, so you have to just open and turn subtitles on off and then they go away. And I had to do that quite a bit. And yeah, like I said, there was a period in the middle of about 15 hours maybe 20, where it felt like I couldn't go 15 minutes without having something, and it was just I was getting very frustrated. And then 1.5 or 1.05 and 1.06 hit pretty close together, and the following 40 plus hours were very like there was I don't remember much happening outside of the usual sort of built-in jank that will have to get polished out over time, like weird fall damage and
God,
the speed skating on the edge of things and stuff like that.
I've had that like random collision death so many times. I don't know what it is, you just try and climb something and you just explode and die.
Yeah, I only had it happen a few times, but it's very annoying when it
happened to me like 20 times.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But I'm always climbing shit because, I don't know, I just like moving around in combat and it's always a mistake. And I feel like the save system is sometimes a bit weird and inconsistent. So sometimes I'll be doing like the little gigs or like the police scanners and like I have done 2 of them and it hasn't saved and I'll just explode and I'm like, for fuck's sake, man.
Yeah, I think
I would say that I had a lot of bugs. I had no broken quests, I only had 1 crash. They were never significant, and I would even say some of them were actually really funny. I especially like how janky the summon vehicle thing is. That thing is so broken, and it made me laugh every time that my motorbike would spawn above me, or it would make a car flip in the air, or it would just come crashing down, or spawn on a fucking oil
I had a few times
somewhere.
where it was just falling through the world over and over again, which is pretty funny.
Oh, I did get one. I did fall through the world once as well. That was cool.
I think I did as well, but it might have been when I was doing myth stuff and jumping around. You can find some spots in this game with the double jump where it's just like, there is no geometry here, and you just walk right through it and fall through the world.
I did find a spot down an alleyway which just had no wall, and you could just walk into the void. That was kind of interesting.
I think I might have... I wonder, was there like a dead, or like there were cops beating up a guy?
I think so, yeah. I think it was the alleyway.
Okay, I saw that as well, yeah. So there's just a wall that's just like not there.
Yeah. I was like, I can just go into the void. This is fun.
Yeah, I think there's like an element of bugginess that is endearing and sort of funny, and then there's bugs that are getting in the way of enjoying the game, and this has a mix for sure. I definitely had a lot of bugs as well, but
there was one fun one where I was on stage as Johnny playing a musical number. Mild story spoiler there. But they hadn't got rid of the ability to talk to the NPCs in the crowd.
Oh, yeah.
And they just had the default like interactions like, bug off! Like, while I'm rocking out on stage.
And you're trying to like hit E to scream into the microphone, and you're...
There's a lot of like... It's like less jank and more overlooked polish, I would say.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, like, and it all comes back to just... I'm sure all of these things would have been fixed. If they had another 6 months or a year to just go over it and over and over it. And, yeah.
I'd also say that I wasn't happy with the performance a lot of the time. It was only in the busier areas. I would say at this point, Corpo Plaza is the only like real punishing area for my PC.
Yeah.
Like that can
And I mean, to be fair, you are running it with like literally every setting turned up to max.
It is. And I am a bit more affected by frame rate. I've always been a bit weird about it. If it goes below 50, I'm like, smallest violin in the world type thing. But it is probably the worst performing game that I've played in a long, long time, which obviously at this point is probably not a surprise.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, I
that's
had
what
a little bit
say,
more.
really.
I had a little more frame rate to work with, but I think I like that it is so demanding because I can tell it's demanding visually. You know what I mean? It's just like I have every setting turned on, and oh my god, it's worth it because look at this shit.
I am probably done talking about bugs and tech stuff. Do you want to transition into a positive?
Yeah.
Let's go from 40 minutes of one of the most negative gaming events of the year into one of the most impressive things I've ever seen in video games. Should we do that?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Night City, eh?
Oh my god.
So, Night City...
madmen.
Everyone at this point knows that it's good. You know, if you watched a Cyberpunk review, you know the game's buggy, and you know Night City is good. I think those are the 2 bullet points which everyone knows about. But I would say that every review hasn't even done it justice. This is like not only the greatest video game environment ever made, that's like underselling it. I think it's one of the most technically impressive things I've ever seen. It is so far in front of everything that's ever been done, it's unbelievable. The only thing I can remember feeling the same way about is when I first saw Lord of the Rings. I remember watching Lord of the Rings and it felt like this was from the future. And it was done to such an amazing standard that I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And Night City is just ridiculous.
I felt that way about like Saint Denis when I finally got to Saint Denis and Red Dead after like 30 hours, of being out in the open world. And Saint Denis is really impressive. And I mean, Red Dead as a whole is really impressive. But Night City is like if they took Saint Denis and then expanded it horizontally by about 400 times and then also did it vertically by about 400 times.
Fucking hell, man. It is unbelievable. It's so intricate and layered and detailed. Like every worthless alleyway that has nothing in it is like I walk down an alleyway and see the amount of detail that's put into places and it will make me anxious thinking about the human beings that had to lay this stuff out. And you can look around and you can scan for what I would call you're looking for where they cheated. You're looking for copy and pasting of pipes and, vents.
Yeah.
And I don't see anything.
There definitely is.
I'm sure there is.
Assets, but you don't even notice them.
But I'm looking for them and I don't see anything. Everything feels so unique and thought out on a scale which I've never seen before in any medium. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. The reason I said, I am okay with the frame rate is because it feels like it's doing things I've never seen before.
Yeah.
And I like when a game... This feels like a PC game in a way that I haven't seen in a long time. And my introduction to CD Projekt was Witcher 2, which I played pretty much right when it came out. And I had just gotten a gaming PC for the first time ever. And I played The Witcher 2. And I played it with all the settings turned on. And I, didn't know much about frame rates 10 years ago. And in hindsight, I realize now it was probably running at about 25 FPS most of the time.
Yeah.
And I remember just being staggered at how good that game looked. Because it was PC only at the time as well. And they eventually made an Xbox 360 version 2 years later. And I remember I still have this part of me that's okay, the game is running poorly, and it's not like Fallout where it's running poorly because the game is just complete shit. It's running poorly because the technology here is ridiculous, and it's at a scale that's ridiculous. And this feels like the first PC-ass PC game in a long time in that regard. It really, we just had the PS5 come out. We just had next generation hit, and Cyberpunk is more impressive than any of those things by an enormous margin. And it's the tech is good. The tech is very good on a PC, obviously, because it's also the tech is just brute force tech. It's not art. It's not like Demon Souls where everything is everything's perfectly lit by a human being. This is just I have a $3,000 gaming PC. I'm getting graphics. Grr, just
it is.
Shoot the rays everywhere. But it's this marriage of technology and artistry and scale that has never ever. There is nothing to compare it with.
Yeah, it really is nothing.
What cities are there in games? So you have GTA 5, but that's a 2-generation-old game at this point. Still a great looking game, still an impressive game. But you get downtown and it's 4 blocks, and the buildings only go up 30 stories, and then whatever. And something like Assassin's Creed Syndicate, that's a pretty dense, or Unity, pretty dense, old city, lots of art, but it's still pretty small, relatively speaking, and it's only 4 stories high.
Yeah.
This is the only game, and this is what I was hoping it would do. I wanted a game to capture the claustrophobia of a city, of a big city. And no game has ever done that before until Cyberpunk. And it really does. I have a distinct memory as a kid going, because I grew up out in the country, I remember going to Montreal in Quebec, Canada for the first time downtown. And I remember sticking my head out the window and being unable to see the top of a skyscraper and just being like, what the fuck? And that is a feeling that's never been managed to have been captured in a game. And they did it here. And it's unbelievable. The city is unbelievable. And it is only something that you can appreciate over time.
Yes.
It is not like you can't just boot it up and like if I were to show this game to people that don't, like if my parents, they don't pay much attention, but they appreciate, graphics and arts in games sometimes. And if I were to show it, they'd be like, wow, this is really impressive. But then you'd have to be like, no, but you can wander around this map for 100 hours and not even come close to seeing like 50% of the map.
Yeah.
That's what's the craziest part about it.
There's also so many interiors in this city.
Yeah.
I think that's what really sets it apart from a lot of other games, is if you have a GTA or Fallout, a lot of those games, they have interiors, you do stuff inside, but you do spend like 90% of the game fighting on the streets and driving around in cars for GTA.
And there's like a few main missions where you go into buildings, and that's about it.
Yeah, but like outside of the police scanner events, there's a lot of interior, mission settings in this game. And there's no point in this while traveling around Night City where you get that moment. I kind of feel like Spider-Man's a good example, where you fly against the window, not Miles, the first one, and you see like the cardboards, cut out in the window, and you're like,
those are still in Miles, but yeah.
And you're like, all these buildings are hollow, right? It's a video game.
Yeah,
and
it's just
logically that, Night City has hollow buildings, but your brain never gets there. It feels like a fully fledged city, and I think it tricks you by having you go inside so many of the buildings. It feels so fluid.
Yeah, and the fact that they do it without loads, right? You just walk in. This is something that has always, it's such a small thing, and it's so weird to point out, I feel like, but it's something that really amazed me with The Witcher 3, and it applies to this game as well, is that, like, I'm always amazed in The Witcher 3 when you walk into, like, the pub in Novigrad, and they have big windows on the front, and you're in the pub doing story stuff, and you can see out the windows into the square, and the world is going on in the background.
Yeah.
And Cyberpunk does that all the time, where you're up in these, skyscrapers, and you can look out the window and the whole world is there. And I don't know why, but I just feel like windows are still not very common in games in like actual function. Like I remember looking out a window in Fallout 4, and it's like, and it looks like a PS2 game because they unload the entire world and they do like this fake. I think I still have the screenshot saved somewhere.
Yeah.
And this, so you're able to just, you launch the game, you load in, and you never see a loading screen, and you can drive from the Badlands into the afterlife, and you get this. It does micro and macro scale in like unbelievable ways. It is hard to like put into words, because
I think we're not like emphasizing the thought that's put into everything.
So yeah, the one note that I have that is particular to the look of the game is, I think this might be like my favorite game in terms of just visual design in all parts of this game is so good.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like all of the car interiors look incredible. All of the cars look great and are like uniquely designed for the game and feel like logical transitions from what we have today. All of the interior design is amazing. Like every piece of furniture, the layouts, like look at Afterlife and V's apartment and the Perelez's apartment, and like all these apartments have so much thought and design, and there's like a cohesive design language to all of their I guess you would call it like production design, right? All their
There's like
art
visual storytelling with the history of the world wherever you look.
Yeah, and like I only realized this once you dig into the lore, to the database entries, but like there are some of the vehicles are Russian made. So there's like the street cleaner and like the garbage truck are Russian exports. And you look at that and you're like, okay, I can see the similarities between the two vehicles. But then you realize there are Russian-made weapons. The weird like tech hand cannon is Russian-made, and there's a couple other Russian-mades. And then you look at those guns and you're like, these look like the cars. Like they look like they're from the same society.
Yeah.
And like that's the type of stuff. And honestly, maybe the thing that finally did it for me, I don't know why, but it was going to Totentanz. I don't know if you've been there yet, one of the clubs.
Not sure.
It's a Maelstrom club. It's up on it's up in a mega building, and it's mentioned a few times in the lore, in like lore entries, and I didn't realize that it was a club, but there was just something about the name of Totentanz. I'm like, okay, this is going to be like I just picture, gross German night scene.
Yes, I just did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you go into the Totentanz and you're like, this is exactly what I expected it to be. And it's so perfect. And all the clubs in the game
clubs are amazing.
They're so good. Yeah. Like, I don't want to go to any of them in real life, but oh my God, they're so good. They are all so dirty and seedy in just their own like unique ways, and they also have that sense of like cool to them, and they all have a completely unique look and personality and history. And it's just like every part of the game is that way. It's nuts.
Yeah. I remember near the beginning of the game when you first go into the afterlife. And it might have been, in a note, or maybe Rogue said something about why it was called the Afterlife, but I didn't really take it in that much until I went around the corner, and I saw that it used to be a morgue, and they still have the metal slab cases where they put bodies. And I was like, oh, the Afterlife. It used to be a morgue. I get it now.
I didn't even realize that until you pointed that out, and then I went back and I was like, oh yeah, like all the metal slabs are pulled out and people are using them as tables.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that is
it's
brilliant.
So cool. And there's people like water tanks as like dancers.
Right.
God.
Yeah. And that applies to every single piece in the game.
Like every street in this game.
Every street. Like I mentioned the cars. I don't give a shit about cars in real life. Yeah. I can appreciate a few cars and be like, wow, it's a visually a nice piece of design and the interior is beautiful. Great. But like, I don't care about cars. But this game is just like, this game actually made me want to buy a lot of the cars in it. Because it's like, look at this thing. Like, walk up to one of the Quadras. And like, all the cars have their own design. Like, the Quadras they all look like the way Porsches and Ferraris all look like each other. Mm-hmm. And they're just these fictional cars. And then, like, all the character designs are also incredible.
Oh, yeah.
And this was something I remember being struck by in The Witcher 2. Every character in The Witcher 2 was, like, incredibly detailed and covered in all these little things, like all these little, what do they call them?
Piercings, tattoos?
Not well, that to some extent, but like trophies, and like little heirloom, like in Jack Sparrow's costume, right? He's covered in all these like little trinkets. That's what it was, trinkets. And that's the way in this game. And in Witcher 3 was the same way. The character designs are amazing, but it's like every single character, main mission or side mission that you talk to for more than 1 minute looks amazing.
Yeah,
and not just artistry, like the character design itself is amazing and completely unique from every other character, but also just like the technical side of it is also amazing.
Yeah.
Like have you done the side quest with the J-pop group with Carrie Eurodyne?
I did the first leg of that. With the explosion.
Well, I think right, okay. So you eventually will meet them.
Okay.
And you never enter a sort of like a cutscene state with most of these characters in the side missions, which is to say, like, you sort of get locked into on rails, right? And
I don't think there are cutscenes in the game, right?
I mean, there are cutscenes, like, in the sense that it's always in the first person, and you lose control, right? And
in-engine things.
Yeah, you're like sitting there or you're walking somewhere, but that's what I mean by a cutscene is when they like lock in and take camera control away from you. But like you never and when when you do a cutscene in a game, it allows you to like turn off all the other rendering, right? And you can crank up the image quality and character model and lighting and all that shit. And so like but like most of the side characters in this game, you never see in that way. They are just in a room and you're talking to them. And the quality of the models is like the best I've ever seen.
Yeah.
In terms of just like raw, smoothness of their skin, and that like geometric data is just like, look at this character model. This looks unbelievable.
So I was having a good time taking pictures of the character models during those moments, just because they looked so insane. And I took one of Rogue, and I didn't point it out when I posted this in the Discord, but I looked and I was like, it says something on her eye. And I saw it, and it said Oshi, and I was like, I don't know what that is. So I went on the internet, and I typed Cyberpunk Orochi, and I just kind of filtered through until I found a wiki page on Kuroshi optics from Japan. And I was like, that's so cool, man.
Yeah, I see that. I just noticed that as well. Yeah, because everybody has Kuroshi optics.
I hadn't stumbled into the lore of that company yet, so I had to go online and find it.
Yeah. Like that's the type of detail that you're just like, the model of the eye is accurate and has lore behind it, and that applies to every single part of the city.
The eyes have lore.
Yeah, and it really is incredible.
Yeah,
the world, and that applies to like not just the artistry, but like the lore of the world as well, which I think we'll talk about. But just, like the last like 20 hours, I would just, not even that, it was more like only in the last 10 or so hours, as I've gotten almost completely run out of content. There's like a handful of, NCPD things left. I put the marker down and I'm just going to walk there from now on.
Mm-hmm.
I did that last night. I spent an hour and I did like 2 NCPD things in Watson that I hadn't done. And I just walked, and it would be like a kilometer away. Turn the minimap off. I turned the minimap off like 30 or 40 hours like prior. Probably halfway through the game, I just turned the minimap off for most of it because it's so much more pleasant to just navigate visually. And you get lost. So last night I was just walking, and you're navigating by, okay, the marker is somewhere over there. I can see the marker. It's like 800 meters away. I'm just going to walk there. And what happens is you stumble upon this alleyway and that alleyway that you've never been down before. And you do that like 50 times in 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And every one of them is obscenely detailed. And you're like, you realize, I've never seen this place before. And if I were to try and find it again, I would never be able to find it again.
Yeah.
Because there are so many of them. And there's also there's a surprising number of little tucked away story things when you're doing that. I don't know if you found many of them, but there are like little encounters sort of that you can find that are not part of any other tier of, they're not marked in the map in any way. So like I found there was a couple of Maelstrom guys were standing beside a huge truck, and they were talking to someone on a phone, and there were like tire skid marks in front of them, like but just on the road, and there was smoke coming from behind them, and you kill them. They were talking to someone. I don't remember what they were saying. And you see, after you kill them, there's a car at the bottom of this like little, drop off in the city, and it's destroyed, and there's a dead guy beside it, and you loot him, and there's a text exchange of like, I have Maelstrom on my ass, my trunk is full of like preem gear, what do I do? And so you're able to figure out, this was like a little highway robbery that happened, and it's not part of any tier of content, it just is there.
Oh, nice.
I've found probably a dozen of those in the last 20 hours that I was playing. I found there's some cute little movie Easter eggs. I found a Die Hard one of a guy that was trying to crawl out of the vents, and he had been killed by the cops. And I found, which is Die Hard, and I found a Terminator 2 one where it was in the like weird waterways that are down in the south, the storm drain areas.
Oh yeah.
There was one of the big trucks was there, and it had rammed a motorcycle off, and there was a shotgun and a little bit of writing of this, they were being chased by something that they couldn't kill, and there was like a dead robot on the ground, and there's And like the Die Hard one I just found because I accidentally double jumped up onto a rooftop in downtown somewhere. And it's like, someone just put this here, and it's not marked on the map at all. There's so much going on visually. And I'm trying to think, like, it's not just like a visual walk around. Like it feels like a place.
Yeah, I'm literally just trying to leave this to you because I don't know how I put it into words, so I'm just kind of sitting back and I'm going to let you take on this job because it is really hard to express just how ridiculous this location is. There's so many layers to it. It's not just graphics. It's not just cool architecture.
It's like, it's also sound design. There's a lot of amazing sound work in the game. I remember 2 years ago or whenever they did that first gameplay demo and you walk out of V's apartment and there was the sound of the Trauma Team ads echoing through the apartment building, the mega building. And I remember just being struck by that because it just sounded so... They just nailed the voice acting and the tone and the echoing, and it just felt so dystopian. And when you walk out of your apartment for the first time, that ad plays exactly like that. And it's stuff like that as well, all over the place with the sound design, where it's just like this like weird melancholy guy saying, "Trauma Team, dial 9999 because you're worth it." And it's just this, the weird echo on it is just so perfect. And the weird droning, oppressive sounds that play all over the city.
Don't walk.
Oh, the fucking don't walk. That's the worst thing in this whole game.
Non-stop.
Actually, even that is good. Like that, there's just something weirdly just off with that voice, you know? And like, I don't know. I'm sure there are cities that have a verbal, like they actually say that.
Well, in England we got, don't go near the line or whatever.
Right, yes. Yeah. Mind the gap.
Mind the gap, that's it.
Yes. But like, you know, where I am, when you press the button to get the crosswalk, it's like a little bird chirp. So it's like, you know, it's very pleasant, right? Nice. It's this nice little chirping bird. But in Cyberpunk, it's like, walk, don't walk, don't walk. And she never fucking shuts up. And there's just so much stuff like that. Like all the, when you finally get to the end of the game, and you see the credits, there's an entire department of like 20 people. Their entire job for God knows how many years was ads, in-game ads.
I can imagine.
And they're all so good. They're all so they're all like a lot of them really capture that RoboCop, like I'd buy that for $1 type of grossness. And they're all, a lot of them are really good.
I think a good word for it is atmosphere.
Yes.
You have to earn that with a lot of work in these cities. Otherwise it just feels, you know, like a bunch of polygons you're walking around in. And there's an amazing sense of atmosphere in every nook and cranny. I don't think there was ever a section or a street in Cyberpunk where I felt like I do about other parts of the game, where I was like, this isn't finished. There's never a road or alleyway where it just feels like it isn't done, except for maybe a wall missing. But when it comes to like the liveliness of, also it feels like there was almost like cinematography thought put into some of like the viewpoints for where you walk. Like, you know, some of the parts in The Witness where they line up. There's a couple of moments in the game during like cutscenes and scenery and places you're driving where you can tell you're like the 1000th person to maybe take a screenshot of this certain thing because someone's designed the sun to come through this little square, and it's hard to quantify. It's really hard to put into words. That's why I'm kind of leaving it to you. There is so much effort put into every asset of this city. Yeah,
and like The Witcher 3 was this way as well. The Witcher 3 is like if you really spend time walking around The Witcher 3 and looking at things and thinking about the placement of things, they all make sense. Like every town exists with logic behind it. They're not just placed.
I actually thought back to when we did the Best of the Generation. You mentioned your exploration of The Witcher 3 and when you found that town near the water supply. And I thought about that when walking around Cyberpunk because I felt like that example worked for everywhere in the city.
Yeah. And this is like the biggest expansion of Novigrad ever. Like prior to this, you would say, what's one of the best cities in games? And I would immediately think Novigrad because it's not a very big area, but they cram so much into it. It's so dense and it all like makes sense. You know, the church is at the highest point, right? And then the poorest area is down in the shit, literally. And you have all these little alleyways and these funny crooked buildings, like it feels like York, you know, where it's just like this has been here for 1,000 years, and there's people bustling everywhere, and so their world designers were always really good, and they did amazing work in The Witcher 3. But everyone in the art team. Well, not even, just everyone. I don't know.
World teams, so world
like
building.
Everyone that did sound design, character design, art design, map layout, like. It's probably, 70% of the staff that worked on the game worked on those things, right?
Feels like it, yeah.
And they all just did such incredible work. It really is impossible to describe. There's just so much going on at all times. And on PC, at least, the like crowd and pedestrian density can get really nuts.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's on a schedule. Like at night, it's pretty quiet.
Yeah.
During the day at like noon, it's pretty quiet. But I think like at rush hour, I mean, there are times where you can't even drive because there are so many cars on the road.
Yes, I fucking noticed.
And you can barely walk down the sidewalk because there are so many people. And I've not seen that before in games. So, I mean, I guess AC Unity a little bit, but they were terrible. And, you walk around. Saint Denis was not bad about that stuff. There's pretty packed.
Yeah.
But yeah, you combine all these elements, all the sound design, all the art design, all the technology, and it is just the most unbelievably impressive piece of world that I've seen. And it is not just it's all backed up by lore as well.
Mm-hmm. You have to go out your way a little bit and put in the effort to like dig into that stuff. It took me and you like 2 days to find where that was even stored in the fucking menus.
Yeah.
But it is really worth reading into that stuff. Not only because it's just like good sci-fi, but just because it brings everything together when you see the cohesion and you see like why the gangs are where they are and why the buildings look the way they are and where the money's like gone and where the money hasn't gone. And there's some really cool stuff in that department, I think.
Yeah, and you can. The world is enhanced by that stuff. Like I said, I haven't read all the. I still have vehicle and weapon entries that I want. Actually, I don't think I still have district entries as well that I want to read.
Yeah, because they keep popping up as you go along.
Right, that's part of the problem. But like I said, there's like 4 paragraphs of lore for the garbage trucks.
Yeah.
And the city buses. The city buses and the street cleaners are from Russia. They're part of they're Russian exports. And like this car, this manufacturer has this history. And this district, well, it didn't exist 30 years ago because of the fucking nuclear bomb that went off. Mm-hmm. And it was a giant homeless camp. And then people realized it had a nice view and gentrified the whole thing and kicked all the hobos out and turned it into North Oak, where all the celebrities live now. And you're like, that sounds about right.
I do think that maybe there could have been an alternate way to get some of this information across to the player. You can obviously explore and deduce some of this stuff yourself. They do a really good job of that. But you do get a lot of extra value out of exploring if you put in the time to go through these, the databases and all these written things. And I couldn't find them for 2 days. And there's a lot of them. And
the sorting is terrible.
Not a lot of gamers like to read like 100 pages worth of history. And unfortunately, there's not really a way to avoid that when you're going to jump into a really complex, alive place that has history. You know, how
Right.
do you do, if you're not there from day one, like, what are you going to do? And I saw a lot of people online saying, Cyberpunk's like jumping into a TV series on season 11. I'm like, yeah, I get that, but that's kind of how it feels to visit a city. Like, when you
Right.
go to New York, if you haven't read the history, it's the exact same thing. You don't know what anything, you know, maybe New York's not the
It's
best
just like
example,
sensory
'cause, you know,
overload.
but if you go to any big city, you don't know what's like gone on. You don't know who lives where. You don't know what areas are
What
for
districts
which.
are good, and you have to research.
Yeah, just
That's
like
why they
you're
make
a tourist,
those travel
basically.
guides, those books, where it's just like, you know, here's your guide to Paris, to New York.
Yeah,
Like,
and if you're a good traveler, you will sit down before you go abroad and you will read into
yeah.
things. And
absolutely,
that's what
yeah.
Night City is so expansive and deep that you just kind of have to do the same thing. If you wander
Yeah.
around, you are going to be a bit confused about what's going on.
yeah, and you know, the world in Cyberpunk has existed for a long time. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a pen and paper RPG that's been around for like 25 or 30 years. And has, you know, extensive history. And I love that. I'm all for it. But it does make it, you have to put in the work to really appreciate those aspects of it.
Yeah, you do.
And you know, story-wise, it does feel in some ways like you are sort of being thrown into the deep end of the pool, which we'll get into. And I think for me that worked, but it definitely needed. Let's just say this game as a whole needs better onboarding, which we'll talk about shortly, I think.
Yeah.
I'm just looking through
I think you've done a good job.
world notes here.
I think you've done a good job of laying out the layers of the city. Because I feel like all the reviews I watch, people were just like, Night City's really good, it's the best video game environment. And it's like, those are good words, but there's more than it just being like a really pretty big city. And I left it to
you
you.
said
and
layers.
I think, yeah.
Like, this is like, I've never played a game that has layers like this before.
Yeah.
Like, I think maybe one of my favorite spots in the whole game is, the two that are Kabuki is just incredible. Because there's so much going, like, you have these little weird, like, shanty town huts, and then these apartment buildings, and then the mega building off in the distance, and then there's like a highway on top of a highway on top of a road.
The layers are so good.
And then I also love the downtown park, Reconciliation Park, because it's such a weird clash of, like, here's this park dropped down, there's a super highway running around it, running over top of it. There's like an air roadway, you know, because of all the like airships are clearly flying in, like, you know, airspace above it. There's colossal skyscrapers on all sides.
Kind of has that like Kentucky Route Zero and Control dreamscapeness going on at times.
A little bit, yeah. But like in a way that is believable.
Yeah.
In a way that, like, you know, it's hard to say, it's hard to predict what our cities will look like in 50 years, but they're probably going to look pretty fucking weird at a certain point.
I mean,
because the population and, like, travel requirements are, you know, at a certain point, I feel like just driving is going to be like a ridiculously bad way of getting around.
I do feel like expansion upwards is probably the most logical step for a lot of cities, because otherwise you're just stretching out into more land, which, you know, eventually there's going to be a limit of land.
What is New York going to do? You know, I mean, you know, you could do like they're doing in Dubai and, like, just build land for kilometers and kilometers.
Yeah, but eventually you don't want to drive 10 miles within, like, a city to go from district to district, so you just start going up.
So, like, all the, like, 4-story buildings in New York will have to eventually become 40 stories, right? And it's just, it's a pretty, it is like I said, I played 100 hours, more than 100 hours actually, because I did, you know, Myths and Beauty video recordings, which were on a separate save. So I'm at like 125 hours of the game running, which is, you know, I definitely had it running while working for some stretches there. But like 100 hours of playing, and I am still constantly, like, awestruck by the world and the scope and the detail, and I am still constantly lost and finding spots that I've never seen before. Yeah. And they're beautiful.
When it comes to the creative medium of just making things, I think it's one of the best collaborative projects that's ever been done.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
It's absurd, and I don't want to end the positive part of the review on a negative, but as you were saying, like right at the beginning, when we were talking about the elephant in the room, and I was saying it was sad, the saddest thing about Cyberpunk is that this triumph, is just not really being focused on. Obviously it's been complimented by everyone who's played it. Everyone's like, yeah, Night City's really good. But it must just be so brutal for these people to have the focus of this project that they put so much love and effort into just be overshadowed by decisions made by probably a very small amount of people.
Yeah,
I don't want to keep bringing it down because this is the one positive part of the review. But walk around that city, it's like, man, it sucks that there isn't like millions of people seeing this how they should see it. And anyway, I don't want to go backwards.
Yeah, that's the part that makes me like most excited about the future of Cyberpunk. It's just more like it'll get better and people will be able to appreciate that work more and I'll get to see more of it. Like I'm excited to see what their DLCs are. I'm excited to just replay it, and just because I know that every path through it will be different, just literally in how you traverse the city. And I mean, I love games where I can just walk around and look at stuff, and Cyberpunk is the best one of those I think that has ever been made.
They really don't need to make new areas for expansions. I'm sure they will put something in there, but they actually really don't have to.
I don't think that, like they could, I said this to you, or in our chat a while ago, I was like, I would play an entire second game that is like 50 hours long in this world.
Yeah.
Easily. I mean, I would expect like some new interiors, right? That they would add in for missions. But the world is so expansive and so thoughtfully made that I would play, a full other game worth, at least a full other game's worth. And I think you can definitely understand, you can definitely sort of see their like longer term plan in motion here a little bit with it, like the online will happen at some point, and it's like, I understand why. Like they want to
milk the space that they put so much time into.
Exactly. Like if GTA Online can exist in GTA 5's world, which is still a great world, but it's not, it's not that crazy by 2020 standards. For 10 years almost, or 7 or whatever it's been, I can see myself still enjoying walking around Night City in like 10 years from now.
Yeah, I want to know that city off by heart. I want to be able to walk around it just from knowledge, memory.
And that's one of the best parts that I enjoyed about turning the mini-map off is in the latter half of my time with it, I've been able to navigate some parts of it, some small little areas by map knowledge, and just being like, here's the turnoff into Kabuki, got it, or here's the road to get up to this spot, and there's only like a very small little parts of it that I have learned, but that feels accurate to a big city in a way that nothing has ever felt, where it's like, I know now how to get from here to here without looking at a map, and it took 2 weeks of learning the map, and that I've learned maybe like 0.5% of the map.
Yeah, I'd say the same. Yeah,
in 100 hours. It's crazy. Yeah. They really outdid themselves, and I don't think it's the only part of the game that is really good, but it is the part, like we said, of the game that is the least compromised. And I know some people will say like, the world needs way more like interactivity, and
we'll get there,
I guess. But like, I am not one to engage with that sort of stuff. I don't do mini games. I just like to walk around and look at things, and I understand, and I agree that it needs some expansion in those areas. But this doesn't feel any less complete in those areas for how I play these games versus some, like in Red Dead, there's all these things you can do, and I will only ever do them once, and it's when the story tells me to do them. Like, that's just how I am. I'm just not terribly interested in that stuff. So, I'm sure we'll get to that as a point, but maybe it's not a huge deal for me.
Maybe we should transition into that, since it is still, it's a subcategory
still part of the world
of Night City. I let you cover what I think is the greatest positive of the game. And I actually think there are other really significant positives in this game.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
But my biggest problem with the game is the thing that you just said wasn't really a problem for you.
Right.
And it's just the lack of significant interactivity and activities in Night City. There was something strangely disconnecting about walking around an amazing location with, like you said, just a really great atmosphere. The NPCs are a little bit goofy looking, I'm going to say. The proper characters have amazing models, but the NPCs in the city are a little bit goofy, but apart from them being strange and, the traffic being a bit weird, I actually think just walking around the city is quite immersive. But after a while, especially after 20 to 40 to 60 hours, when V never sleeps, never eats, never goes to her apartment, all these things just start to slowly disconnect me from the world. And there is a little bit of repetition to some of the activities in the game. We will get to that in a little bit. I just started to feel like I was playing a cybernetic mercenary simulator who never needed to sleep, eat, or do anything. There is just something missing from the liveliness of this city. And maybe we were spoilt from the effort that Red Dead put in, and obviously the scale is so much substantially smaller for that team, and Rockstar is just... Anyway. There's just some strange moments in the game. This game has some of my favorite aesthetics in bars and pubs I've ever seen. And you'll sit at the bar and ask for a drink, and it will just open up a menu like they're a vending machine.
Just open up the Witcher 3 menus.
Yeah. And
I
there's
think
moments in the game where, I'm not going to spoil what happens, but they're like, we added this drink to a bar. And I'm like, ooh, okay, I'm gonna order it. And then it just opens up a vending machine menu of cans of
And
drink.
also that drink is not in the menu.
Yeah, no, there's no drink. You can't order drinks at a bar. You can just buy the consumables, which are completely useless. I don't know why they're in the game. They clog up your menu and... Anyway,
I don't
there's
know. Because The Witcher 3 did it. And I don't know why they did it in The Witcher 3 either.
But the bars are so plentiful and expressive and amazing in this place. And this is the weird part. There's actually missions where you drink beer and coffee in the missions. So the animations
they have all those animations
are in the game. So,
and they have eating animations and all these things.
Yeah, so why can't I just sit at a bar when there's 17 of them that are amazing in the game and main missions take place? Why can't I sit at a bar and just have a drink? You've made the animations to drink beer. And by the way, you can't finish that beer. I tried. I just drank that beer 40 times and it never goes
bottomless
down.
Beer, right?
It's bottomless beer. And in the game, you go to a casino. And obviously it's Night City.
Do
It's
you?
There's a gig.
Casino?
Yeah, there's a gig.
There's a few casinos actually. There's a few gambling dens, aren't there?
Yeah, and there's you see roulette tables and you just can't do anything with them. It's a crime-filled city. And there's... The only activity I can even remember is there's 2 prostitutes. 2!
There are a few more that do open up.
Well, thank God, because there's poor 2 prostitutes. Being the only 2 prostitutes in Night City, fucking hell, the waiting list must be tremendous. I feel sorry for those ones.
Yeah.
But it's I'm
Again, that all just comes down to, I feel if they had another year, I feel like all those things would have been.
And I know I'm listing superficial things to a world,
but they add up.
They do. And it's
in my case, I'm a weirdo that takes the character. I would go back to V's apartment and sleep when I would get to the end of a session, a long 6-hour session.
I never did that.
I would go back and I would, but I do that with all games. That's sort of how I've always been. But you're not you're completely right. All these things need to be there, and it's interesting how. It's exactly like The Witcher 3.
Yes, it really is.
The world is just a matte painting backdrop for you to walk around in. There is really no interactivity. The only thing you can do in The Witcher 3 is play Gwent with people, which is just, a sub menu that pops up.
But it really is something, Gwent. It really helps for me to kind of put myself in that world.
Yeah, and Gwent is, it's no small something at that. But, The Witcher has tons of bars and pubs and inns and all these things, and you just walk up and you say, let me see what you have, and you get a giant fucking list of chicken sandwiches and beer bottles to add to your inventory. And it's funny how exactly the same this is, but I think the switch to first person makes you, and the
city itself,
setting and the city itself makes you want to interact with it more.
Yeah.
And I totally agree that stuff should be there.
Isn't this weird?
Probably will get there.
I hope
right?
so. Because there's this weird constant disparity in Cyberpunk where you are essentially seeing one aspect of the game which is the best ever made in video games. And I'm not saying I expect every aspect to be up to the standard of Night City, but you do expect it to be like a bit more forward from 2016 and a bit further back.
Oh, yeah.
You can't even customize your character, you can't customize your cars or store them in a garage, they always get summoned. You can't even upgrade your apartment, and you get a lot of cash in this game. It feels like a GTA kind of gradual working up the food chain thing, but you never change the way you live, which seems weird to me.
A lot of parts of the game feel old.
Yeah.
In surprising ways. And yeah, I didn't spend much time on the character customization because, A, it's a first-person game, B, I don't give a shit, and C, I presumed like every open world game, it would have a tattoo parlor and a barber shop,
yes.
And this doesn't.
But the weird thing to me is every other core pillar of this game, while incomplete, is still in a pretty good state of progression. The story, the combat, the characters, they are all almost there. They're not, but they're almost there and they're getting there. And you can really see when you play the main missions and you listen to the characters and when you use the guns, you're like, ooh, there's some problems here, but they're going somewhere, and in a year. But there's just this one core of the game which feels strangely missing.
I bet it is. I bet
you'd expect it to be something though, something there.
I bet they wanted to have all these things, and then when they were told you're shipping it in November of this year, they were like, we don't have time to implement these. We'll implement them later.
Yeah, I guess
Let's just put in the Witcher 3 systems that are already built. We can just slap them in there, and we'll get to all that stuff later. That's what it feels like.
But
it
even
really
the police, everyone's talking about the police, the garbage is completely broken and unfinished.
Terrible.
But at least it's there, a prototype of that system is there, and obviously it's not finished. But there's not even a prototype of darts or, there's nothing there. And there's street race mini missions. And there's boxing
4 of them.
mini missions, but they don't happen outside of the 4 missions. It's you have the UI for racing. The AI is terrible in those races. They teleport everywhere. The god.
It's very bad. Yeah.
But why can't I just naturally engage in this stuff?
Yeah, I agree.
And
I agree.
It's only because Night City is so good that when you have this last little soul of that city missing, it was just I don't know, man. It was just a little bit disappointing to me. One aspect of the game is the best ever made, and another aspect is gone.
Not there.
Yeah,
not present.
And the story's there, the missions are there, the gunplay is there, and there's just this little extra piece, and it's not essential. You don't need it. The Bethesda boys barely ever do anything for their games when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, you're right. They don't really have much of anything.
And like you said, The Witcher doesn't have that much stuff. It's more like a GTA Yakuza thing. But I don't know. It's just 2020. They were going for the next revolution. And like you said, it was probably on the roadmap and just got cut. But I don't know. It's just a little bit weird walking around the city and not just taking the time to live in it. I want to live in that city and I don't feel like I'm living. I just feel like I'm working. And I enjoy the work. The work is fun, but I want to, take an hour off and just sit at a bar and have a pint, and I can't. And it's just ugh. Let me live in this place, man. I don't want to just walk around it.
Yeah. That type of interactivity just goes a long ways to selling the whole thing. That's why Red Dead feels so magical, is because they made the whole game about those little interactions.
Another really small example is when you walk around the city, sometimes there are these like great tourist exhibitions, and they have these plaques. Like, you know, when you travel in real life, they put plaques in there, historic plaques, and you can read them. But you can't in Cyberpunk. And I'm like, I want to know what this thing is. Like, there was the one in Norfolk with these giant...
Oh, the weird birds.
Yeah, with the pillars, and there's like this little tourist
the pillars.
plaque. What was that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I thought you meant like there's like some bird statues.
Yeah.
And but I know what you mean, the cemetery.
Yeah, it almost looks like the Holocaust Museum in Berlin.
Well, there is a database entry for that.
Oh, okay, but there's a plaque outside. Like, why can't I click on the plaque and like read it?
And there is there's like a voiceover voice that comes on and explains what it is, sort of.
But like, again, the interactivity.
I know,
if I was a tourist in real life, I would go up to that plaque and read the history of it, and it's there modeled. Like, just make it go to the database if you want. Just when I click on it.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff like that. It would just elevate the whole experience.
Yeah, and like you said, it feels like they started because I couldn't think of a specific example when you were talking about the like non-icon events when you walk around the city, but there are some things, like I've seen shootouts and fights, and there's some really fun dialogue of people just talking as you walk around. So there's like...
Yeah, there's quite a lot of just like characters talking to each other and having a conversation that just adds... And I think there's even like a tutorial pop-up or something that says like, sometimes it's worth just hanging out and listening to people because it adds their conversations tell you more about the environment. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I mean, it's just sort of fluff conversation, but it does add something to it.
I think like the small aspect of Red Dead, just being able to say hello to people and them to be like, hey, howdy, partner.
Yeah, it's funny how many parts of Cyberpunk are exactly like The Witcher 3, including how you bump into anyone and they go, whoa, and
why don't you spit on me? It's like, oh, sorry.
Or you hit talk to the people and they just say this. They like in The Witcher 3, they have like 4 lines of dialogue and that's all you ever hear from anyone.
Yeah.
And this is exactly the same. And the consumables menu is exactly the same. And the lack of interactivity is exactly the same. But, you know, The Witcher 3 is 5 years old. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be exactly the same. It's been 5 years.
Yeah. Like parts of this game feel like they are 5 years in the past, and another part feels like it's 5 years in the future.
Yeah.
It's just strange at times.
It is a very strange game as a whole. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I feel like we should now go back a little bit and start at like the beginning, because my feelings on Cyberpunk were a bit of a journey. Yeah,
we should probably do onboarding now.
Like we've sort of said it, but like on a high level for me, just like a broad summary, like I very much like Cyberpunk.
Yeah, me too.
Even though it's got many flaws and frustrations and parts of it that aren't fully baked, I really like it. And wouldn't play 100 hours of a game if I didn't really like it. Mm-hmm. But it was not that way out of the gate.
No, me neither. And we chose different paths at the beginning.
Yeah, so the first like 15 hours of this game, maybe actually the whole game, it's just like the worst onboarding, worst explained game I've played. I don't remember since when. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just impenetrable. Like, we're still talking about things and we're like, I don't know. I don't know how this works. Like, I still don't know how the fucking damage mods work. I still don't know how much health an enemy has.
Do you know one thing I still don't know is when you do that little hacking minigame on the access points and you get money, and it gives you these things called quick hack components. I'm like, what are those for? I quick hack all the time, and does it cost stuff to do that?
I have no idea.
What are those for?
I have no idea. And like that applies to so many things where it's like, we've sort of started to try and find like the highest crit damage build possible. And I got a crit last night for 750,000 damage.
Hell yeah.
And it's like, I don't know how much health an enemy has though.
I think like 2,000.
But like I don't know.
Yeah.
Like one of the notes I wasn't sure what I was wanted to do with this game in terms of like content wise after Myths. I was like, do I want to do a review or not? So I took some notes that were as I was playing in the first 10 hours, and then stopped because it was going to be a bad way to play that game. But there were so it's like, and one of the notes I have is 120 damage per second good?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like, that was one of the questions I had out of the gate when I got a gun, and it was like, oh, this is 120 and this one's 100. And it's like, is that good?
Yeah.
Like, how much health do the enemies have? And now that I've played over 100 hours of it, I still have no fucking clue.
Yeah.
Like, obviously their health goes up a bit over, as, you know, it sort of scales with your level a little bit.
Does it?
To some extent.
Okay. I didn't know that.
I would imagine.
Okay.
But I don't know. I'm just presuming. Because, yeah, I have no idea how much health they have. Like I said, 120 DPS, maybe that's good. Like, I should really pick up a gun that has like 200 DPS and put it on and see how it is. Because the damage numbers I'm putting out now are so obscene that, like, it doesn't matter, I think. Unless maybe the enemies do have 100,000 health. I don't fucking know.
I don't know either, man.
And there's so many things like that. I remember trying to figure out how to know if an enemy would get mad at me.
They don't say when you're trespassing in the game.
And there's no way to know.
No, like so redness on the map. There's nothing.
Right. So the way you tell an enemy is they have a yellow little line. They have a little yellow arrow above their head, and it's like, which is never explained.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, okay, so these guys are enemies, which basically just means it is okay for you to kill them, because in a lot of areas, the enemies will not treat you as an enemy. You can just walk right past them. They're just chilling. They're just, the yellow arrow just means they are part of an enemy faction.
Yeah, they're like armed and ready to fight.
Yeah, if you shot them in the head, they would all turn on you, and you would not get the police called on you.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no way to know when an enemy or an action will cause an enemy to start shooting at you. And I remember sending screenshots of trying to figure out if there was any way to know, and I was just being an idiot and I was missing it, and there isn't. And I was standing in front of like an entranceway with the little barricade thingy that drops down, and I was standing on the road side of it, the public side of it, and there were two enemies standing like 2 feet in front of me, and you look at the mini-map, nothing. Scan them, nothing. You take 2 steps forward, they all turn hostile.
I've got to the point that 70 hours later, I'm still just like creeping forward, looking for the prompt to go red, and then I run backwards.
Right.
It's like walking on landmines.
And there's no way to know that. And even last night, I came across some enemies they were all just chilling. And I thought, okay, I'm obviously going to turn them all aggro as soon as I walk up to them. And I just walked right past them, and they didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're just chilling. Sometimes they're just chilling.
And sometimes you'll be in a situation where you can like pick up an access code, and sometimes it's fine for you to just pick up an access code, and sometimes they will turn on you.
That was another thing that happened early on. There was a little side gig, and there's a key card sitting in front of a guy who's staring right at it. And in every other video game on Earth, especially Bethesda games, which this game is very much a Bethesda game in a lot of ways, which I think we should talk about.
Yeah.
You hover over the thing, and it said, and your prompt turns red, and there's a little brackets that say you're stealing this, and you're able to deduce, okay, if I take this while this guy is looking at it, he's going to get mad. That makes sense.
Yeah, how are we the point where that system isn't obvious? Like, have we gone backwards from that?
Right. This game doesn't have that system at all.
Just make the text red.
And it's, in fact, it is counterintuitive, because there are tutorial prompts that say there's no such thing as stealing in Night City.
Yeah.
Loot everything, no one gives a shit. That is false.
Why is that a thing? Did they just not put in like a system? Because that just feels
weird
in the context of the world, just like loot people's stuff. It just feels kind of weird.
I would presume that was, a thing that they just didn't get around to implementing. Because, again, it's not true. Like
Yeah.
if you walk up to an enemy area and take something from in front of them, they all turn aggro on you.
Yeah.
Specifically the key cards. If an enemy is looking at you and you pick up the key card, he pulls out a shotgun and shoots you in the face. And there's no way to know that.
I know we haven't got on to the AI in the game yet, but I really wish we could move on past the whole AI group being alerted by one action and they all know and they're all going to shoot you dead for like picking up a key card. I wish we could go past that.
Yeah, there were quite a few games this gen that, or most of them are that way, where you alert one enemy and the entire base knows exactly where you are. And it just sucks.
Like, can we get past that? Like, come on.
Like, it sucked in Assassin's Creed 2 14 years ago.
No questions, they're just all shooting you. It's like, is that how the laws work in this city?
Well, and it's just like they wouldn't all know where I was.
Yeah.
Right? It just doesn't make any sense.
They didn't even communicate.
Yeah. And there's just a lot of stuff like that.
Especially at the beginning when you're trying to like get your feet on the ground. It's really overwhelming.
And that's the thing. It's all things that you just adapt to and figure out. Yeah. But it's so bad out of the gate. And all those things are made worse by the fact that like you're dealing no damage to people.
Yeah.
Like,
fuck.
And you're taking insane amounts of damage. Like, I remember early on, I had a double-barreled slug shotgun or something, or a sawed-off shotgun, and I had to shoot a guy 12 times point blank to kill him.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck is this game?
It reminded me of playing Morrowind. I remember trying to play Morrowind after I really loved Oblivion, and I was obviously a level 1 versus a level 3 rat, and I was just bashing this rat with a battle axe, and I was doing like 1 damage. And then I eventually fell off the game because I think, the games had just got a bit more approachable. But it felt like, I don't know when that game came out, probably like 2009. And it felt like an ancient RPG. Morrowind, yeah.
Morrowind was like, 2003.
Yeah, it reminded me of Morrowind.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I don't need games to be realistic. But
No.
I'm shooting
just
this guy
explain
in the head.
Yeah, just explain it and balance it. And I mean, this game is not balanced at all.
No.
That is add to the long list of things that would have gotten sorted out in another 6 to 12 months of playtesting. You go through it and immediately I can tell you this game needs a balance pass.
Yeah, the gun balance is insane.
And I mean, this is sort of like we're jumping around big time here, but it's the only way to do it. I think there's a lot of stuff in this game that is unbalanced in a way that I really like and is very fun.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Because a lot of games are so up their own fucking ass nowadays, and everything's got to be so, everything has to be, you have to maintain that like level of difficulty all the way through, and you never feel like you're actually getting stronger, and God forbid you find something that's overpowered and then they patch it and it's like, oh, we don't want you to have too much fun.
Yeah.
This game is just like, nah, fuck that. Literally every single thing in this game is completely brokenly overpowered after a certain point. And I think that's great.
Yeah, I agree.
It's too overpowered.
Yeah.
And you get there too early. But I think it's great that like every gun type can feel broken. I've read melee can be incredibly powerful. I've read hacking can be incredibly powerful. I think that is surprising to me, and it's great that they just let you go crazy. Like when you found that mod early on, and it's the only mod that's interesting in the game where it's like there is no more vertical recoil on this gun.
Yeah, that's fun.
And you can also get rolls of guns that have no horizontal recoil and stack them. I've only seen revolvers with no horizontal recoil, but still, I did have a revolver at one point that had no horizontal or vertical recoil, and it's amazing.
Yeah,
like, and the disappointing thing with the mods is that there's really not much variety to the mods.
Yeah.
When you posted that saying this mod has no vertical recoil, I thought, wow, my mind was racing about all the crazy shit. And that's one of those things that makes me really excited for modders, because the attachment and mod system in this game feels ripe for modders to just be like, here is the Cyberpunk mod mega pack that has like some guy has made like 400 new mods and attachments for guns, and they're all crazy. That's exciting. But yeah, there's not enough variety to them, and the attachments are all like the suppressors are incredible, or the one blue suppressor is insanely powerful because you get a 2.5x damage modifier when attacking from stealth. But then all of the other attachments are completely boring and useless. Like all the scopes are like increase your ADS time by 0.013%. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, what? If it was like, you know, the white one is a percentage and then the purple one is 20%, that would make sense. And again, that just feels like one of these things that is, they would have added that, right? In time, it would have been balanced and they would have been like, oh, maybe we should make these mods more interesting and scale better.
Yeah. One thing I do wish, going back to the guns getting overpowered, I'm with you. I like that the builds get ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I wish there was something to use it on. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yes.
I really enjoyed our back and forth on Discord where we were doing these stupid min-max crit builds and we were just, you know, looking through the RPG trees and seeing how far we could push it. But, like, the other day, I think I randomly picked up a different gun and I shot someone and did 2,000 damage and they still died in one hit. And I was like, I'm doing 500,000. Like, can I, like, give me like a big robot or something? Like, I want to feel
it.
Needed
like a raid.
Yeah.
Like a single player raid.
Like, it's just,
something.
like, I know there's like main quests and side quest boss fights, but they're still going down in one hit.
Yeah.
Like, give me something. I mean, like, it's an RPG. Put like an area on the map where if I go there, I get attacked by something horrible and formidable, like a big X. Like, give me something to build up a crazy build against.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's... Yes, it's... The problem, the note I have is, like, it's really fun that the weapons are really broken and overpowered, but it means that you are one-shotting everything, like, 20 hours into the game.
Yeah.
And it basically nullifies combat. It's still fun.
It still is fun.
It's... The loot... Like, the crazy thing to me is that I've had more fun with the loot system in this game than I did with Borderlands 3's gun systems and loot.
Interesting, because some people don't like the loot. And, you know, it is weird for this type of game to have, like, a Diablo Neo type loot system. I kind of really like the loot system in this game.
Me too, and I didn't know that there was a loot system.
Yeah. I think it's fun to pick up, like, 20 weapons in there to be, like, this weird economy, and you're breaking it down, and you're farming it and making money. I know it's not for everyone, but I kind of like it. My type of thing.
I do too, and there's like good weapon variety.
Yes.
I never have equipped a melee weapon, so I haven't even touched any of the melee stuff in this game, and that's exciting for a replay.
Yeah.
But just the gun variety is good. There's enough visual variety, like you find guns that have different skins on them, which is fun. There's the mods do a lot, and things scale interestingly and are fun. And yeah, I just like Borderlands 3. I felt like I was using the same 6 guns over and over again, and they were just getting more powerful, and that was it. And none of them were that crazy. And this game, it doesn't have fantastical guns quite, though you do have the smart guns, which are very stupidly strong.
Yeah.
But I spent way more time chasing builds and experimenting than I have with a lot of loot games over the last few years, and I think it's a fun loot game, and I really liked it as a loot game, which I was not expecting.
I feel like we should kind of transition. I know we're still on onboarding, but I just want to quickly say that one of my biggest surprises of the game is that the gunplay is kind of good.
Right.
Like, I think it's kind of like heavy and weighty and fun in a way that I really wasn't expecting. I was expecting like Fallout.
Well, and the other thing that I was going to say that is really unbalanced is the double jump.
Oh, yeah.
But like the double jump makes the game so much more fun.
It does, yeah.
Because it's like, now I'm playing Titanfall 2, it's just like double jumping over shit and sprinting at everyone. It is tragic that they had to cut wall running, because if there was double jump wall running in this game, it would be fucking amazing. And there's a lot of like horizontal surfaces, vertical surfaces to wall run on in this game. But yeah, I think something that we probably should have said it at the very beginning was like, when I went I went into Cyberpunk with lower expectations than I think most people did.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is a few things. The first is that I did not pay much attention to the marketing.
Mm-hmm.
I went fairly dark on things. I watched that first gameplay demo from 2 years ago, and even at the time with that, I was not blown away by it. I remember, there was the famous E3 trailer, which is still the greatest trailer ever made, and game reveal fucking extraordinary. But then the press saw the secret demo, and they were like, it was like a religious awakening for them. They were describing it as like the most extraordinary thing they'd ever seen in their entire miserable fucking lives. And then they find, and everyone was begging to please release the gameplay demo. And then they did 2 months later. And I remember distinctly watching that and being like underwhelmed by it in a way that was just like, I watched that and I was like, this looks good. This looks like a video game. Mm-hmm. This doesn't look like the Second Coming. This isn't a revolution. This just looks like a solid enough action RPG. And I was like, okay, cool. The city looks neat. And at the time the graphics were not super polished or finished. And all the way through, I was never like blown away by anything that they showed of Cyberpunk outside of the world, right? And then ignoring most of the marketing, that helped a lot as well. So I went into this with the hope of, okay, if the world is good, I'll be happy. And it was, as we discussed. And then I think we've said this a few times to each other on podcasts, is like, if one other part of it is good, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
In addition to the world. And story stuff, I was not convinced was going to be great, because all the marketing story-wise for the game was very, like, look at us swear, and male V was all over it, and I was like, ooh, this male V voice actor is not great, and so I didn't go into it with super high story expectations, partially also because of The Witcher 3 being what it was. I was like, I don't know if they're gonna... And I did not expect the gameplay to be very compelling, because The Witcher 3 is not very compelling, and it's their first time making a first-person shooter.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I think the writing and story stuff is largely pretty great, which we'll get to later. And yeah, the combat is good.
Yeah.
It's fun.
It really is
like,
good.
It's really, like all things in this game, it takes a while, but once you get into it, it's like, oh, this game's like, it's kind of fun to play.
Yeah, and it's pretty varied. Like, they give you a lot of tools to do quite experimental, silly things with combat. I don't think it's maybe as immersive as an immersive sim, but I spec'd into quite a varied build when it comes to stealth, hacking, and obviously shooting people's heads off. And I had like a really good time just mixing up the ways that I was approaching these situations. The hacking and the stealth, again, is on that long list of things that could probably do with some more work, some more flexibility. But when
I'm not sure about the hacking in particular, because
like,
I've heard people describe it as like you become like a magician, where you like, you take over a camera and then you just fucking kill everyone by using, like, looking at them with your cameras and hacking them.
So I just got the skill where you can shut people off. You just turn them off like they're a robot.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
But I can't afford to do that often. So what I have to do, if I'm trying to do sneaky things, and in this game sometimes on occasion you'll get a little side quest mission, a gig where it gives you more money for being stealthy. So like, I'll do a little thing where two people will be together chatting, and I'll put a system reset on one of them, and you see this bar filling up, and I will time a silence headshot on the other guy, and they're both like die at the same time, and it's like cool, it's like satisfying. I feel like a cyber ninja, and I'm using like my silence pistol, taking down people using distractions from a vending machine, using the very poorly introduced and explained breach protocol to turn off all the cameras, and then I take over a turret and I'm shooting someone with a turret, and then I run in with an automatic explosive pistol which homes over cover, and I double jump in the air so I get extra height. And there's like all these little tools that make you a really destructive just cyber warrior, and there's also
cyber psycho.
But there's also like a really surprising amount of variation in the way that you can approach situations. You kind of don't have to, but it's fun to do so.
That's sort of the problem. But that's the problem with so many games is like, you don't have to, but you can. And, as we've discussed many times, some games are good about making you experiment.
Yeah.
And other games just sort of say, like, here's all the tools, you could use them if you want to, or you could just shoot everyone in the head. And, I talked about that with Watch Dogs 3, where it's like, why would I do any of this shit? It's so fucking boring. I can just headshot everyone. And this game, you can say the exact same thing in that you could just headshot everyone, but I think all the other play styles are actually interesting and fun.
Yeah.
And when I realized that sort of early on. And I sort of decided, like, I'm not even going to engage with that, like, the other play styles. I'm going to save them for replays. So that's why I have not touched Melee. And I basically didn't do hacking. I just went all into shooting and played it as, like, a frantic first-person shooter. And with the knowledge that, like, I'm going to get into this other stuff in replays in the future. And that is, it is very surprising. And, yeah, it's varied and fun in a way that, and feels good in a way that just I was not expecting at all.
There's a good sense of goofiness as well to some of the combat. Like, enemies will fall over their dead buddies. There's some great moments where, like, I'll chuck a grenade behind cover where someone's hiding and they're like flop over, then I'll just pop him in the head, and I'll laugh out loud like multiple times just shooting people up in this game. And it's violent and it's gory and over the top, and you can just wreak havoc in, like, pretty creative ways, honestly.
I wish the AI was even remotely good.
Yes, yeah.
Stealth, I think they're, like, too good. Like, it's really hard to play really stealthy in this, I find. But in terms of just combat AI, like, the problem for me with the last 20 hours, and part of the reason I sort of just decided to, like, finish the game somewhat quickly, well, not quickly, just charge through it with some long sessions, was just every combat encounter is just, it's kind of got brain dead after a while because the AI just doesn't do much.
Yeah.
You need to sort of play slowly for the AI to keep up with you. And I was not doing that. I just run in with a pistol and go boom, 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 and they're all dead. And the two guys that are still alive are just like, oh my God. And
again,
it's
a balance thing because I think you might have done it as well, where you can increase detection time. So if you have a silenced pistol, there's like, and a keyboard and mouse, like there's just nothing these guys can do unless there's like 30 of them. Then maybe one will see you coming.
One thing that I ended up doing to make it harder for myself, I played the whole game pretty much on hard.
Yeah, me too.
I never upped it to very hard. It just the damage you take was just too crazy. I was like, fuck this.
You die instantly.
But dying instantly, you already do that enough randomly for no fucking reason at all. I don't need to do it from enemies in combat as well.
Snipers.
But I end up playing like a good chunk of the game with a controller on my TV to add some difficulty. And also what I would end up doing is I would do like a lot of story heavy stuff on my TV and then come back to the PC for like side gigs where you can just pop heads left and right, and that sort of mixed up was fun. Also, that game looks unbelievable on a good TV.
I bet.
At that, quote unquote 4K, 60 FPS is wild. Yeah, the combat as a whole is a great surprise.
Yeah, it really is.
Makes me want to engage with it and spend a lot more time with it, and I really would not have guessed that would have been the case. So they considering, like, I have to give them props for CD Projekt just sort of goes for it in their, like, Witcher 1, their first game is like a crazy fucking hardcore RPG. And then The Witcher 2, they're like, what if the entire second half of the game was missable? Or, was different depending on what choice you made. And then The Witcher 3, they're like, why don't we make an open world game? Let's try an open world. And then they, made like one of the most beloved open world games of all time. And then after that, they're like, let's make a first person shooter, And it's like, companies don't do that. Like, you look at GTA or Rockstar. Rockstar's games are the way they are because they've been making the same fucking game for 15 years.
Yeah.
Like, literally, the exact, like, the structure and the mission design, like, it's all exactly the same as it was in 2003. They've just gotten way better at it. Or maybe better at presenting it. I don't know. There's something to be said for, if I didn't know anything about games and you showed me Cyberpunk and you showed me The Witcher 3, I would not think that they were from the same developer.
Yeah.
because they're very different, and there's something to be said for that, for not playing it safe in your game design, and then on top of that, like making a good first person shooter.
Like for their first go, like that's a pretty damn good shot at looter shooters.
Yeah,
I would honestly play like a Destiny-esque version of that game. Like sometimes, not. Well,
maybe that's what GTA
format.
Online is.
Yeah,
or
Cyberpunk
Online.
So, I said
whatever the fuck.
But yeah, there are, there's certain activities in the game which aren't as interesting as others. And it does sometimes feel like you're playing a bit more of a grindy game. And I kind of still liked it, doing that stuff. I also don't know if you noticed, but because I don't know how much of the game you did in stealth, but there's like a lot of like thought put into the design of like every building there is a gig in or a side quest in, so you can approach it from every angle. There's like windows put in certain places and ways to come in from the roof, and you'll find little pipes that go along the ceiling. And there's a lot of them in the game. Yeah,
I see people still saying like that this is like, as the immersive sim parts of it are like non-existent, and like I don't agree. Like,
I played Deus Ex and this feels like better than that. Maybe not the original. I know people are very I'm talking about
I like Deus Ex Mankind Divided was the most recent one, and that game obviously, the level design is more intricate because it's a small game.
Yeah, I was thinking back to the first 360 one.
Right. But yeah, this feels a lot like that, where it's like, especially if you get creative with like your jumping and you look around, like a lot of rooftops have entrances. And I mean, yeah, I didn't engage with it a lot because I was just running and gunning most of the time. But whenever there was a stealth mission, I would scout the entire building and be like, and there are usually like 2 or 3 or 4 ways into a building. There was one mission where in Santo Domingo, I think, or somewhere where in Padres area, where you had to, it was like a Valentino restaurant, and you had to get up to like the 3rd floor, and you can obviously go in the front door, guns blazing. You can take the fire exit up, and maybe you'd be able to pass a skill check to open a door. What I did, there was just a guy in the window smoking, and the window was open, and he was 3 floors up. I just fucking shot him in the head and double jumped in through the window. And completed the mission in 30 seconds. And it was like, that's cool, because when I play that as a melee character, I'll probably just go in the front door and slash everyone.
There was a couple of gigs where I felt guilty for finishing it so quickly, because all the interiors in the game are so like thoughtful and intricate, and I just go in and then leave.
Yeah, I don't even know what this restaurant looks like, because I just saw a little apartment on the 3rd floor, and that's it, and then I left. And yeah, I think considering it's a giant open world, they do well enough with the level design. There could be more intricate stuff, but like when it's at a scale at this size, I think what's there is pretty respectable.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Especially for their first ever go at it, like not bad.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. Like,
not bad at all, man.
I would say that about a lot of the things in this game. It's like, this is like, it's a better one of these than most of the other ones out there. Like, as a first-person open world, like, okay, there's not a lot of first-person shooter open world RPGs to begin with, and Fallout is the most one-to-one comparison, and the Fallout games play like fucking shit.
Yeah, they had to invent VATS just to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. And this game is in... we should transition to like the activities, and then maybe do like story stuff.
Sure.
And then probably wrap up. So in only another hour. But yeah, you said it, and you spoilered it in our discussions a while ago. So maybe you should, I don't know if you want to say it, what you said about this game, but it is completely accurate, I think. And not in an insulting way, I don't think, either. I mean, in some ways, it is a Bethesda game, in the bugginess of it. But, like, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, you said this is like a Bethesda game. It's like a Fallout game.
It feels like if Bethesda didn't go off the rails.
Right. And it 100% is. Like, people are talking about GTA and Deus Ex and this and that, but, like, this is a Fallout game.
It's just, like, closer to Skyrim, really.
It really is. It really is. And that, you know, some people would regard that as, like, an insult, but I don't think it is. Because...
Yeah, from a certain aspect, you could say that because people expected more progression.
Sure.
But I kind of like the format, honestly. I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
That's why Skyrim sold 1 billion copies 8 times.
Exactly. And I really wanted to like Fallout 4, and I tried to get into Fallout 3 so many times and just was never able to. And I wanted to like Fallout 4, and I just... Fallout 4 is fine. It's like an unbuttered piece of toast. You're like, it's food, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, it's not insufferable, but it's just the world was not interesting. The quests weren't there. There was like a couple of good quests in that game.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of interesting areas in that game to explore, but the exploration wasn't there. The combat wasn't there. The quests weren't there. And this game is like, it's a Fallout game, but not in the post-apocalypse. And you're wandering around, you're looting every fucking thing that isn't nailed down. You're picking up, which I have a weird soft spot for. I don't know why.
Yeah, me too. Actually, I like it.
I like just being a giant vacuum cleaner and just picking every goddamn thing up, even though it's all useless.
Me too. I'm into it.
It's just something about it that I enjoy.
Me too. I love it.
And you wander around. You're in the first person the whole time. You're shooting lots of guys. You're getting loot. You're doing lots of little small side things. You're going on big linear main quests. It's kind of janky. It's kind of underbaked.
Yeah, it is.
Like it's a Fallout game, but with a good world, good combat, and good story stuff.
Yeah, it is. Like the format is like scary how comparable they are. Like for people who haven't actually played Cyberpunk because of whatever issues, there is the lowest tier of mission, which is called NCP police scanners, which is literally just an outpost. Like imagine running into bandits in Skyrim. You just kill people and that's it.
Yeah, it's like 6 enemies.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a little bit of like world like telling behind what happened, but because of the quantity, I'll be honest, I did kind of fall off reading those after a while.
I think the problem with there's actually like 2 tiers of the blue NCPD. There's like the bigger, larger outposts, which are very much outposts where it's like there's a serial killer and his gang here, and there's like 30 guys. But then there's also a lot of just like there's an assault in progress, and those ones, which there are the most of, those ones are like 6 enemies, and it's usually them killing someone and robbing them.
I appreciate that they made conversations for every single one.
Yes.
But they're
all the same.
Are like, oh, fucking meet me here, you piece of shit, you motherfucker, I'm over here, oh shit, the NCP's here, oh, I got shot, I got some drugs, and you read like 100 of them, and you're like, oh, I get it, mate, I get it.
Yeah, I stopped, I would just sort of skim over them, and yeah, they're all of those ones are exactly the same. Like, that was a perfect summary of them. And there are a lot of them. But they serve as a place for me to test out my crit damage and for me to get loot. And I mean, I have a Carnage shotgun that I've used for the last 20 hours. I don't know if you use the Carnage shotgun, but it is fucking awesome.
I got one that Judy gave me.
It's it fires like one shot with... So normally a shotgun has 10 pellets. This one has 30, and every shot is like shunk, 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 put the new bullet in. It's insane.
There's forms of shotgun.
Yeah, but the Carnage is I don't know if it's I think it's like a form factor. Yeah, so
I am using an iconic one from Judy. It's called the Mox.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that one. I'm not sure. Anyways, but that one is my highest DPS shotgun that I've ever seen. It's insane. And I just got that. It's gold, an epic item or whatever the tier is called.
Iconic.
And I got that from a random assault in progress.
Yeah.
From a dude. A dude had it. And so they're kind of all worth doing.
And every now and then there is a little bit of storytelling that is more than just people saying, you fucking choom, come over here.
Yeah.
And there was one where I found a bunch of people locked in containers, and one of them had left a message to her mum, and I was like, oh,
because the tiger claws are like human traffickers.
Yeah, it was really sad, that one.
And the other benefit of doing the blue missions is that it takes you to parts of the map.
Yes.
It's like they're all worth doing. That's the quote unquote problem of this game, is that every single thing is worth doing because it takes you to places in the map. Yes. And they're all thought out. Like there was one in Santo Domingo where again, I think it's just an assault in progress. And it's like this weird Netrunner house where the pool is full of like Netrunner bathtubs.
That was so cool.
And there's like wires all running out of it. And you read the lore and it was like this weird hostage situation. And the guy whose son was kidnapped had like sent in, Militech, and just they killed all the Netrunners that were there. And
did you find the people underground? Because I wasn't sure if that was necessary.
Yeah, they were that's just optional. They were just part of. They were kidnapped. That was another one of them. Yeah, there's so much stuff like that there's just enough of that where it makes you want to see them all, because like 70% of them are just like, choom, I'm dead, I'm shot, oh shit, I've been betrayed. But then the other 30% are like, oh, what an interesting little like 2-minute long environmental story is sitting here. And that's neat, yeah. And then
there's the second tier.
There's the second tier, which are you can buy cars.
Fucking hell, these stupid markers.
The second tier is a yellow exclamation mark, and those are gigs, and
they are, going back to the comparison to Bethesda, they are very comparable to when you were asked to go into a cave to get a family relic. That's right. What I would
They're like the
to.
Dungeons of the game. Yeah,
they are like the dungeons. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, and I think the gigs is probably where I have one of my bigger complaints about the game. Okay. Is I think the gigs are all good and interesting. Yeah. The problem with the gigs is that they're not. It's a few things. The first one is that they're not well rolled out, obviously. Mm-hmm. Which is the fact that V has an unlisted phone number, and everyone in Night City has his phone number, and everyone in Night City will call you constantly. And the gigs, they're just weirdly presented, I think is what it is. They are basically like, they're not side quests. They're a step below that, but there's a fair amount of storytelling in those side quests. They're just weirdly presented because you're driving, and they don't call you when you're driving. Line. Yeah, you hop out of your car 10 feet away from a question mark, and Regina calls you. She's like, "Yo, V, someone's been kidnapped. Go rescue them." And you're like, and I'm going to send you a 700-word message about the information about this thing as well. And you're like, okay, fine. And it's just a weird way of presenting it. It's just, and I think, so like the presentation part of it is one, and then the other part of it is that there's a fair amount of those side gigs that interconnect and form a larger story of the area. Yeah. But then they also, there's no way to know what side gig is connected to another side gig. And then they also don't really do anything with those stories in the end. So like there's two examples that really stand out to me. The one in Watson is that there's a Russian that has arrived who is like in negotiations with Arasaka, and there's like 3 or 4 side gigs that are somewhat related to the Russians. You bug his car.
Oh yeah.
And then you find out that he's at the hotel, and you infiltrate the hotel, and you get conversation data that something is going down. The Russians are doing something with Arasaka, and it's referenced all over that Watson area. And I don't mind if like 1 or 2 of those things are left unexplained, right? Mm-hmm. But the problem is partially that I bugged the car at hour 10, and then at hour 30 I came across the hotel.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, right, I remember this. That's kind of interesting that they're connected. Cool. if they had just like made the marker on the map a different color, that would have been enough. Where you could like chase them down. If it's like the Russian storyline is all this Russian side gigs are red, and you can, and maybe they put like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't think the order really matters all that much, because you can sort of rearrange it in your head and piece the story together. But like that would have gone a long ways, because there's quite a few of those side stories that are in side gigs that are really interesting, that are just, because of the way they're all presented in the game, they're all presented as being the exact same thing when they're actually not. It's hard to digest them, and it's also sort of frustrating that they don't add up to anything. Like there's a really interesting one in downtown with the Biotechnica lady. I don't know if you've encountered those side gigs yet, but
was it an assassination?
Yeah, you can talk to her eventually.
I did talk to her, yeah.
So there's like 3 other side gigs that are all related to her.
Okay.
And like Biotechnica and this lady have been up to some bad shit, and there's quite a few other side gigs in the area that are related to that, including I think a couple of NCPD things where it's like this guy had intel and was killed.
Interesting. Okay.
And they don't come together to form. You can see there's all these pieces, and I can imagine it being like, okay, they almost need another tier where you go to the fixer, because the fixers are all in the world.
Yeah.
But there's no reason for them to be there. You can visit all these fixers and ask them like 2 questions, and that's it. And I imagine it would be better if you could go to them and they would treat it like a side quest board, where you go to the fixer and they're like, yo, there's a Russian that just arrived in the Night City. Go and bug his car. And then you go and bug his car and then return to her. And then the next mission opens up, right? And then you can also have like the side gigs where she calls you that are just sort of disconnected from those things. I feel like that would be a good way to go about it, because then you would get a clearer narrative through these areas, because there is good stuff there, and they do sometimes do neat stuff with not knowing what side gig is going to be what, where like some of them are just, you run in, steal a thing, run out, but sometimes you go in and there's like extensive dialogue sequences and skill checks in dialogue, and they feel like a bigger piece of story, and it's kind of neat when they just sort of sneak up on you. But they needed to better integrate them and just partition them out better and sort them better, and not have the fucking cars be marked as side quests as well.
I was going to say, you have got further than I got when it comes to piecing anything gig related together. I didn't really know that any of them connected. I'll be honest, when it came to them, I just wasn't listening to a lot of them, because you had to read like 17 paragraphs. I just thought they would just, tick off things.
Yeah.
I listened to the basic synopsis, but I wasn't paying enough attention to know that they ever connected.
So that's part of the problem, right? Is that it's hard to know that. And I only realized that quite a long ways in, is when I got to the hotel, the Russian hotel.
How am I supposed to? I got a terrible memory, mate. You know me.
Well, I know, yeah. But when I realized that they were connected, it made me pay quite close attention to all of them. And so I read every briefing. And
I did too. I just don't have a good memory.
Yeah, that's fair. But again, that, they are connected. There's quite a few of them that are connected. And they're just so hard to follow, because it's just a giant jumble on the map.
I think the journal in general made me have that problem with just normal side quests, where obviously a lot of the times when you have a big list of side quests, it depends how you play as a person, but I'm like a proximity guy. I'll just go to whatever's closest to me. If something is across the entire map, just because I did like the first step of that quest chain, I'm not going to travel all the way over the map when there was something like 2 feet away from me. And sometimes you take long breaks from side quests. And I would be like, I don't remember how this started. And the synopsis is super, super vague in the journal. It's no Bethesda game where it said, this happened and this happened. It just gives you like the very first introductory, prologue thing.
Yeah, and it's written in third hand, like it's all from Johnny's perspective.
Yeah, it's like, go meet this person here. I hope this isn't like this job. I was like, who am I meeting again?
And it's funny because the Witcher's quests descriptions are all written in third hand as well. They're all from Dandelion, like recounting Geralt's tales, but they update.
Yes.
In paragraphs. So like you get the first paragraph and then the second paragraph and then, and this doesn't do that. The journal as a whole, the journal, shards, phone, and database are all such a giant clusterfuck. The phone, oh my god, I hate it so much when you get a text message
and it just lists everyone.
And you can't read the whole thing when it pops up. So you click view messages.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take you to that message.
It just goes to everyone's message.
Takes you to the top of the message list, and you have to scroll. Oh, there's Judy's message. Oh, okay, and there's... Okay, what were you saying, Judy? Yeah, okay, yeah. Yes, I will, and reply. And that applies to just so many things. Same with the shards. Same with the quest tracking. There's just... So, yeah, the side content is where I think... To me, it feels like they needed the most amount of time to bring it. It needed that other year to differentiate them, sort them, and present them better than they are. Because, and it's interesting. This feels like a natural extension of what they were doing in The Witcher. Because The Witcher has all these question marks. And they're... pretty much exactly like this game where they're like a small little combat encounter and you get loot and there's a lore entry there. And in the base game Witcher 3, they were all just like one-offs. But in Blood and Wine, they made it so that the side stuff, the question marks, all connected to each other and would form a larger narrative for the area. And this feels like a continuation of that in ways that I think could have been really interesting, but it's just not presented well. And it just needed more time and more cohesive direction, I think, for some of these side gigs. Because, they said after The Witcher 3, they're like, we didn't originally want to put all these question marks on the map. We didn't want to originally mark them all on the map. We wanted to just to be like you would find them. But at the time, Ubisoft and their busy clusterfuck maps were popular, and so they were like, well, we're unsure of ourselves, so we're just going to cover the map with markers. And it was stupid in The Witcher 3. And then after The Witcher 3, they were like, we're not going to do that. And that was a lie. Because this map, when you start the game and you zoom out, it is literally every single thing on the map is visible except for top tier side quests, which open up. It's literally just 1,000 yellow question marks and 1,000 blue things, and you're like, holy fucking shit, this is
the format of this game is very strange. I feel like it's always been like this unspoken rule in giant open worlds that you stagnate how the player travels from area to area. In the old GTAs, the islands used to be locks. You'd have Island 1, 2, and 3, and you couldn't go to Island 2 before you'd progress.
And this game starts off with a lockdown, right? And I thought, oh, well, that makes sense. They're going to do like, Witcher 3 did White Orchard, which was very intelligent, a very small
It makes it consumable and staggered and easy to...
Exactly. And it eases you into the giant pool. And so when they said there was a lockdown in the area, I was like, that makes sense. I'm going to be stuck in this little, Chinatown area or whatever that V lives in for 10 hours or something. Nope.
And also, like, they have the perfect format and context to do that. Like, you're in a cyber world. You could lock the bridge and have, a bioscanner that won't let you through to Corpo Land until you've done a certain quest. But you can drive across the entire map and then, 14 fixers call you at the same time. It's like, oh my god, what is happening?
Yeah. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird. And this sort of ties into story, but I won't get too far into it. But this ties into story where it's... And that thing someone said, it feels like you're starting in season 4.
Yeah.
And that applies to a lot of the character intros, especially with, the fixers. And for me, it didn't bother me quite as much because I went Street Kid. And to me, it sort of makes sense that all these fixers would just know V.
Yeah, all right, yeah.
But the first 10 hours, I was like, who the fuck is this person? Who are you? Why are you calling me? What do you want? Leave me alone. And then after a certain point, I realized, oh, they're fixers. I see. Okay. And it sort of makes more sense. And I don't know if you meet any of the fixers in the prologue, but in Street Kid, you meet Padre, like in the first...
Oh, interesting.
In like the first 30 seconds of the game. You wake up in the bar in the El Coyote Gojo or whatever. You talk to, I think, Kirk, who is like a shitty fixer who doesn't come up again really in the game. And... then you leave the bar to go do steal a car, and you run into Padre right there in front of the bar. And he's, and so it's like, okay, he's a fixer. I can make the logical leap and be like, okay, he's a street kid. He's grew up here. He knows all the fixers. But as a player, it makes it really fucking confusing.
Yeah, I will say that there's not much to say about the different life paths, but they are not meaningless. Very good. Because the Nomad and I didn't do Corpo, but I've heard like the context for those are just a bit off. There was a certain mission where I met Padre, and I don't think I'd gone to which area does he rule?
Westbrook.
I can't remember.
I can't remember either, but yeah, that sort of southern area.
But I'd barely met him or done any gigs in that area. So when I was in this mission, it's like, go talk to Padre. He's here. I was like, who? And then you talk to him, it's like, Padre, my friend, how are you doing on this day? I was like, what the fuck is this guy?
That's so weird. Yeah.
There's a couple of feels like sequence things which are a bit weird in the game.
It really feels like Street Kid is the path that makes most sense.
Yeah.
But they also... The whole game is missing like a 15-hour intro.
Mm-hmm.
It really does feel like it needs... a White Orchard style thing where you are, and you can have it be different for each life path, and it's weird because you go. I presume the like party bonding sequence with Jackie is present for all characters.
Yeah, I saw that.
Paths. Like that's the.
I want to play that.
Time where, yeah, exactly. That's the period of time where you are introduced to the game.
Yeah,
and they skip over that. And it's noticeable, and it feels very. It really is. Like, I did not like this game for the first 15 hours. Mm-hmm. I was not having a good time. I was enjoying the world and the story stuff, but like, I had no idea how to play, no idea what the skills were like, no idea about mods, like no idea what the crafting was like. So much of the systems are not explained. And then on top of that, you have all these fucking people calling you every 30 seconds and texting you. And it is just like an unrelenting barrage of just information. And it feels like you've missed the first 15 hours of the game.
Yeah, it's strange.
And that's what really makes me think this game needs like the enhanced edition, the way that The Witcher 1 and 2 got. And The Witcher 2 had this problem as well. I actually, even The Witcher 3... story-wise has the problem of like, I have no idea who any of these people are, because I think it's part of their style is just like they like making games set in worlds where everyone has history
established,
and I like that, but it does make it off-putting. And in The Witcher 2's case, they had like no tutorials, nothing was explained. You're starting in the middle of that game. It's like flashbacks, and you can pick the order of the flashback. Like, so much of the beginning of Witcher 2 is like the first 10 hours of that game were just like, oh my god. And then it got an enhanced edition, and they added in better tutorials, they put in like a combat arena, and they did this and that, and this game needs that for like almost all the parts of it. The fixers need introductions, the skill trees need explanations. Like, you just found out that you can't rearrange your attributes.
Yes, I didn't realize that level 50 was the max level, and there's no respecking, so now my plans of progress have been halted, and I am locked out of a bunch of things forever, so that's cool.
Yeah, because they don't explain any of that. I mean, when they, like every game on Earth, you open the skill tree for the first time, and it holds your hand and makes you unlock the same skill, and, it says the attributes do this, and you can't change them, and perk points do this, but you can respec if you want to later on. In this game, you open up the skill tree, and it's like, there's 700 fucking skills here, and I don't know what any of them do.
That first mission where you are, I can't remember her name, it's like Sandra Dorset, you're rescuing her from that bath. like, I'm just trying to figure out what's going on because the game has these pop-ups of like, you got a gun, you've also got a skill point, and I'm looking around and there's just Jackie
Also,
yelling at
don't
you,
alert
dude.
anyone.
Jackie, come on, V, come on, V. It's like, hold the fuck on, dude. I have no idea what's going on here. There's like vending machines around me, and I don't know how to do anything. And it's just like, please, game, just shut up for a second.
And yeah, I still have no idea how the quick hacks or any of that stuff works. There's so much stuff that is just, it's not explained at all. And it is a brutal first 10 hours.
Yeah, it's rough.
It is really rough.
I was a bit disappointed by the Nomad entry because it really felt like it was setting itself up to be like a really cool way to introduce Night City. I won't say too much in case people want to see it themselves, but there's a sequence where you climb an antenna and you can see Night City in the distance. And I'm like, ooh, it's going to build up to me, getting into it. And then, again, you do a thing and you get that montage that you saw, and then you're in mission 1. And I'm like, wait, I thought I was like building up to Night City. Maybe there was going to be a mission where it's hard to get into the city. It's all locked down and you can't travel by water because of the lore we read. It's like, ooh, maybe there's going to be a build-up and you're in Night City. But no, I'm just doing this first mission in an interior. And the first time I saw Night City was on a balcony, which is just a weird way to see the city for the first time. And I fell off that balcony twice because I was just trying to see the city. I was like, I want to see the city, man. It's the main attraction of the whole game. I'll shoot people later. Why am I doing combat like 10 seconds in?
Like every game, so many open world games have that limitation, where they have that moment where it's like,
like the Breath of the Wild hill scene. Like, it's part of it, man. I want to see it.
Coming out of the vaults and seeing the world and all these, and The Witcher, same thing. You're in a White Orchard and then you leave White Orchard and they put you on this hilltop where you can see like you can see most of Velen, and you can see Novigrad off in the distance, and you can see the Nilfgaard camp at the south, and you're like, oh my god, this map is huge.
It's cliche, but it's exciting for the player to see the whole world.
Yes. Yeah, it's a cliche for a reason. Like, some cliches exist because they're, dumb, but a lot of them exist because they're good, right? And it's a good cliche. And that's why I say the street kid thing felt like the most logical, and I actually kind of liked it from the street kid perspective. It's like, you wake up in a bar in Night City, you go out, you're in Night City.
Yeah, that sounds like the best one for sure.
You do a gig in Night City. And I said to you, I was like, it's interesting how there is no introduction. There is no real grand introduction. It's just like you're thrown, like you wake up in the middle of already knowing the city. And so it works as a street kid, I think. And it works for creating this, like, it's not a city that is there for your playground. It's not like, here, let's pull the curtain back and reveal the city. It's just like, you live here. It's just New York City, whatever. It's just Night City. Who cares?
They could have done it for Nomad, though. You're literally starting the outskirts and going.
Well, that's the thing, yeah. So, as a street kid, I thought, oh, that makes a lot of sense, and I actually think I like it quite a bit. But then hearing that Corpo and Nomad don't have that at all, it doesn't make any sense. Like, a Nomad,
oh god, you drive into the city as a passenger in first person, so you're like trying to like look through the window. You're like, come on, man! It's dark. Like, it's raining. I can't see what's going on here. It was really annoying.
Yeah, whereas in Street Kid, you also do a drive-through as a passenger, but you like are starting already in the city, and you're just, and again, it's just like, oh, there's the city, whatever. But yeah, it would make sense as a Nomad to be like, here's the big reveal. And Corpo, I have no idea. It's hard to say. I haven't seen it. I've deliberately avoided seeing them just because it's some small bit of content that I haven't seen. But yeah, apparently the White Orchard for The Witcher 3 was a very late addition to that game, and it's too bad this game didn't get something like that, because it needs it.
It really does.
Needs and the White Orchard area is brilliant in The Witcher 3, and it is very effective, and this needed exactly the same thing, and it's weird that it doesn't. And and then also, well, maybe I was going to say a story related thing, but I don't know if there's more gameplay things you want to touch on.
We could, before we go into story, maybe just talk about a little bit of the like RPG-ness. I don't really have much to say except that I think some people said like the RPG-ness is not that good. I actually think the skill trees in the game are pretty good. Like, not all of them are very substantial, but they do really affect your playstyle and the way your character ends up after quite a long period of time. I liked it.
The skill trees are interesting because out of the gate, you're like, all these skills seem useless.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, headshot damage is increased by 10%. It's like, what? But the skill trees, they really do add up, and they do get nuts.
They are overwhelming when you have no context for what any of it means, and your first build will probably be bullshit because you're like, I guess I'll just pick this one, which does more damage for like the first 20 levels.
I cheated and gave myself 100,000 and respect all my perk points like 20 hours in because the first 20 hours you're just like, I don't fucking know. I'll click this one.
That's tempting.
And I was gonna say the RPG parts of it. I was going to say the story RPG parts of it, but yeah, the gameplay RPG parts of it, I think are good. They're solid. I think there's quite a lot of variety in play styles, a lot more than I was expecting, and they did a good job with that stuff. There's a lot of skills. I looked through the stealth skill trees and the melee skill trees, and it's like, it sounds fun.
Yeah,
I look forward to messing around with them. Same with the hacking ones.
I will say one part of the game which is very clearly unfinished and is kind of a little bit, it's odd when you first interact with it, is the cyber implants part of the game. You can change your eyeballs and your lungs and your spines, but you just walk up to the vendor, buy it, and leave, and it's in you.
Yeah.
There's no animation, there's no noise, and, the game's not finished. We know it at that point, but it is one of the weirder and more jarring areas of unfinishedness. You can literally change, like, the synapses in your brain, and you walk in talking to the vendor standing there, and you change the synapses, and then you're still just stood there. There's nothing.
Yeah, and
it's
leave.
just like, okay, I guess I have a different brain and eyeballs now? Nothing happened.
And all the cyberware stuff is, like, not explained very well either, obviously.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's just like The Witcher 3 where every vendor has their own inventory.
Yeah, it's annoying because I've been looking for stuff for so long. Like with the crafting stuff, I don't know where to get schematics to craft more things. They just appear sometimes. I'm like, wait, I can craft this mod and this grenade now? When did that happen? And I keep going to these vendors and no one's got anything. I'm like, where do I get this stuff from? Where do I get mods? I want control so that I can make these builds and I make the character my way, but I can't fucking find anything.
Yeah, and there are some, like I read last night or 2 nights ago, there's a mod, I don't remember what it did, but it sounded insane. And the only way you can get it is if you don't punch fingers the creepy Ripper dog.
Off.
And he becomes a Ripper dog you can visit.
God,
and he's got like this crazy like gold tier, plus 50% something mod that sounded nuts. And I was like, fuck. Like there's
he was a great character, by the way.
He was so creepy. He's so gross. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the game that just, in terms of the RPG parts of it, in gameplay RPG parts of it, that feel like they just need a lot of time to just better organize, explain, and sort, and make and surface things as well. Like they need to just, I'm sure there'll be a mod or just a patch that is just like every Ripper doc has every mod.
Yeah, please.
From the get-go. Stuff like that. Every weapons vendor should have everything. I'm sure those will happen at some point, probably through modding.
They should probably have like a better estimation of how exploitative gamers can be of certain things. Like maybe don't just sell an item which does double damage. And
No. I think they should. I think I love all that stuff.
Well, give me something to kill then. Give me a big old robot.
No, yeah, the solution is more like do something that takes more than one bullet.
Yeah, create some like crazy bosses on the map or something, not just cyber psychos which are one hit.
Oh, the cyber psychos are babies. They're nothing. Like they're even right at the beginning of the game, they're not difficult.
Oh, my first couple I found early, so they were the first one was a nightmare for me. It was when I was like really weak. Oh god.
Yeah, but yeah, like the cyber psychos are a good. They're again, in a year, either it'll be CD Projekt developed, or there'll be a mod that has made the Cyber Psychos like actually difficult.
There is some like in mech suits, and they take a bit more punch.
They definitely did. Yeah.
They need something bigger in that game, though.
Yeah. They need something that will take more than a bullet.
Yeah, give me a tank or something.
Yeah. I'm just looking at my list here of like little notes.
Yeah.
There's really I feel like this happens a lot this gen. Bad damage feedback on your end.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell when you're taking damage, and then, you get the when you have like 100 HP left, or 10% HP, and it's like, why am I not getting better feedback?
There's too many healing items in the game. Way too many. Like
oh my god, yeah.
I'm only killed if I die instantly.
I sold 180. I only ever use the green ones because that seems to be the only ones that there are.
Yeah.
There's like, I have like 5 of the other types. I sold like 180 green ones at one point, and I still had 200.
Yeah, there's just so many healing items. There's
So
no
many
risk
healing
unless you are
items.
one-shotted, basically.
And then there's a skill that doubles the efficiency of them, and it's like, oh, okay, GG.
I think when it comes to like the more tech-heavy weapons, there's weapons that ricochet. No idea how to effectively use that, by the way.
No, still haven't figured it out.
There's a weapon that shoots through materials, power weapons, which I did have a really good time with. And there is the auto-homing weapons. Just like a couple more of those, I think. It's just weird to only have like 2 special abilities. And if you're not a melee build, you're probably not going to use Mantis Blades or the Whip or Gorilla Punching, which is like a whole tier of like the fun cybernetic stuff. You're not that cyber in the game, really, except for hacking. Just maybe some more... just crazy, wacky guns.
Yeah.
Bit more like Borderlands weirdness.
Yeah, and I think that is something where the mod systems and the attachments have a lot of potential for expansion. Mm-hmm. And I hope that people, either the developers or modders, make them more interesting. Like, I want to, give me a mod where like the guns deal electrical damage or fire damage. Yeah. Not have that tied to a gun roll, but have that just be a mod. And let me stack them. Let me have a gun that shoots like flaming electrical poison bullets, and homes on enemies. Like, let me combine and mix and match things. That would be. Or apparently Johnny Silverhand's gun is all 3 of those. It is a homing. It can tech and it can ricochet.
That's cool.
And you can switch between them, but I never used that gun because it was shit. Stuff like that would be cool.
I got a couple of other little things.
I have... go ahead. You go ahead.
How are we this far into games and they haven't figured out how to make smashing windows work? Like,
what? Oh my god!
What is going on with the glass in this game?
I don't know. Did you have that problem when you were with Pan Am and you were in the deserted town and you had to break in to start the generator?
I think so. There's so many times trying to smash glass and it's like made out of like cement or something.
Well, and you can't mantle through the glass window until like every bit of the glass is gone from it.
So
and I
weird.
spent like 5 minutes trying to climb through a window, and Pan Am's like, V, just climb through the window. V, break the glass, climb through the window, idiot. And it's like, I'm fucking trying. Thank you very much.
I don't know how we've come this far. I don't know. They can't do glass yet.
Because a lot of games have really good glass nowadays.
Yeah, Last of Us
like
2.
The Last of Us.
One good part about that game.
Yep. Same with The Division. The Division, it's like one of the few things in Division where it's like, wow, the glass in this game breaks real good.
Yeah.
That's a weird little... And especially because of how janky it is to climb through broken glass windows. It's
Poor stealth people.
Yeah.
Stealth builds are rough. Do you want to do one? I'll look through my notes.
Sure, yeah. I had a couple of like specific control. They don't let you on PC. On a PC, I want to be able to rebind every single thing in the game. Mm-hmm. Every single control should be rebindable. And this game, a lot of stuff is not rebindable. You cannot rebind the dodge. It's on a double tap.
Dodge, the double. I almost forgot about the double tapping dodge.
So bad. And I had a mod installed that broke, unfortunately, pretty quickly, which makes sense, where I was able to rebind and I think you can actually just modify the control like INI file to rebind dodge, but I put it on my mouse button on one of my mouse buttons where my thumb is, and it was so awesome. I was like fucking dodging left and right, like just a ninja, just dodging everywhere. And it makes the combat feel so much better, but by default, it's double tap a direction. And here's something you do a lot on PC. You hit a W on the keypad, on the keyboard, like twice in a row really quickly because you're taking a little step forward to grab that loot, and then you do a dodge, and you fall off the fucking building.
I did that a lot.
And you should be able to rebind that.
And this is a PC game first, so there's no excuse.
Exactly. And so, like, I shouldn't have to go into an INI file or install a mod that lets me change those things.
How did that get past testing? What the fuck?
Same with double tap Alt to holster a weapon.
Oh, yeah, it
is
doesn't work.
so inconsistent. Like, I have spent 30 seconds hitting Alt, and it's like, nope, cycle the weapon. Nope, cycle the weapon. Nope, cycle the weapon.
There's so
And
many
like,
keys on the keyboard. Why are they doing this?
yeah. Like, let me hit H to holster my gun, because you do it a lot. You don't want to have your gun out all the time. It's not, little things like that. They need more keyboard customization. And yeah, it's a PC game first and foremost. They don't, like, I shouldn't have to install mods to fix those things. It's key binding on PC is still one of those things where it's just like, why can I not change everything? It's something that I respect about Ubisoft. All of their games, even on consoles, you can change every single keybind in the game on controller, everything. And that's great. You should be able to. Like, fuck your control scheme. Let me play it how I want to play it. Also, the vehicle handling is terrible. Terrible.
I forgot.
And I installed a mod, it came out like 3 days after the game, and it was better vehicle handling. Amazing. Oh, really? Bless you, modders. It makes all the cars feel so much better to drive. They are really sticky to the ground. They feel like GTA cars a lot more. Like, just transformative driving experience. I hated driving cars, installed that mod, and I was like, I like driving now because it made the driving feel good.
I feel like we've already said this like vaguely, and everyone's talked about it, but the AI really is just abysmal across like all fronts. Main characters, the police, the civilians,
the cars.
It's just terrible, man.
I do kind of get a kick out of the fact that the people in Night City are so shitty that they don't even stop. They just run you over.
Yeah.
There is something funny to me about that, but also
it's jump scared me multiple times.
Oh yeah, big time. Like, but it's not deliberate. It's because there's no AI to the cars. They just don't know what to do. Like, and the AI like doesn't bother me a ton when it's outside of combat, but the combat AI is really what bums me out.
Yeah,
it's just trash. But yeah, the AI across the board is it's so useless.
This is probably a technical thing from where they were at, but you should be able to fly something in this game. This city is too vertical to only be looked at from the ground, in my opinion. Even if it's a late game thing, a jetpack or a flying thing just seems like a crime to not see the city from the air. When you showed me the beauty video, I was like, holy shit, because I'd never seen it from that perspective before. And that just seems like a waste of vistas to me. But obviously, with the technical, what's going on, maybe that was just put on, the backboard for later.
Yeah, well, and they'd probably have to, you'd have to, so many rooftops would have to have, geometry rendered and collision and stuff like that. I understand why they made it ground only, because it's gonna be a lot of work to make it so that you could not just clip through rooftops and all that. But I agree.
But those solar panel fields don't really look like much when you're on the ground, but your footage of them is like, oh my god, this looks so good.
Yeah,
what a waste.
That's part of why I like the double jump, is because it makes exploring the city much more interesting, because you can get vertical so much quicker, and you can get onto rooftops and run across lower level rooftops. And it was a hint of ooh, this is cool. And there's lots of flying vehicles all over the place, even if it was just a taxi where you could get in and it was just an on-rail thing and you would fly through the city. That would be more than enough.
There's no taxis in the game either, by the way. There's no taxis.
No, it's just all the end cart, and it just doesn't.
No trauma team.
You don't see it. It's just
enough. Yeah.
I didn't really fast travel ever in this game. I just drove everywhere. I would only fast travel at the end of a session when I was doing hunting around, selling stuff, and buying mods. But aside from that, I pretty much never fast traveled. It's just I don't like fast traveling in games like this, like Red Dead and Witcher. It's nice to just walk around and drive around and. But yeah, they're GTA 4, you can call a cab and sit in the back of the cab and it drives you in real time. And they should have that here in some form.
Also, like, I've already talked about it, but the police are bad, but they don't chase you in cars.
No.
They don't chase you in cars. They only chase you on foot.
You just get in a car and you drive like 2 blocks and you've lost the police and that's it.
What is good? Never mind. I'll move past it. I keep bringing it. I'll move past it. This is like a nitpick because, again, it's like asking for the jetpack. It's asking for more work than they had time to do. But it just seems weird that BDs is like the big thing in the game and you don't really do them that much except for in main quests. I feel like you should be able to go to a club and there should be, even if they're minimal and really short, little BDs. Because like
there should be a couple like in Red Dead where you can go to the movie theater and watch something.
Because even like the really shitty one you do with a monk in that side quest, like just like things like that.
Yeah. I think this is story related, but I think the brain dance stuff is really cool and used really well.
Yeah, I like it as well.
But yeah, it is like the main form of entertainment in that game, in world, and yeah, you can't use it just casually.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can sit down on your couch in your apartment. You should be able to sit down on your couch, put on your brain dance, and like there be the same 5.
Yeah.
Have like five little 5-minute things that you can.
No one would
watch.
expect like a Gwent library of it. Just like a couple.
Yeah.
Maybe you could find 5 along the game. That'd be cool as you progress.
Right. Yeah, like in some games you find like a record and it's like, oh, now we can sit and play this record.
God, it's like a perfect format for like little storytelling as well that's disconnected from everything. Imagine like the completely random Cyberpunk world stories you could put in a little BD, even if they're 1 minute long. I
was surprised that they weren't used more.
I
think they are used well though in the main and side.
Yeah, the tech of it's pretty damn cool.
Yes, yeah, but yeah, they're not. I think there's a fine balance there, and they were probably leaned a little too far on the other side of it, which is not using it enough.
Yeah.
I think the worry when they announced it was like, oh god, fucking every mission is going to be load up the brain dance and examine the environment. But they don't overuse it. They underuse it. Yeah.
I think we haven't talked about it, but the music in the game is amazing.
Oh, it's a killer soundtrack.
I like the stuff when you're in the car and you just get like horrible music because that's like how things have evolved. There's like
there's
music
a lot
that's called like tinnitus music, and it's just awful, like screeching.
The tinnitus music is so interesting. That's a band called Tinnitus,
right?
And they are a Maelstrom band,
of course.
They play at Totentan sometimes, and the interesting thing about Tinnitus is that it's only audible to the Maelstrom people because they're so cyber. They're cyber ears. It's like radio frequency that's only picked up by their cyber ears. So only Maelstrom folks can hear it. And that's why it sounds like shit.
That makes sense.
Like, there's so much good stuff like this in this game. Like, there's so much good story stuff.
The world building is excellent.
The world building. So yeah, when they were talking about, because Nancy is like interviewing someone about tinnitus, and he's like, they're like talking music and Maelstrom and what type of music the Maelstrom guys like, and they're talking about tinnitus, and you have to sort of dig into it, but then you realize, oh right, that makes so much sense. God, it's so good.
You just reminded me of one thing we completely skipped over, because as you were talking, I was like, I was just thinking in my head, maybe I just didn't read that thing. The readables aren't marked as you've already read them as you go through the world.
Oh god. So okay, it's bugged. I'm pretty sure it's bugged because there are a few times where I have come across a readable that was grayed out and I already read it. So I think it might just be a polish thing that is just a quality of life thing that's not fully functional.
I hope so, because I fucking hate that.
Oh yeah, it's terrible. Like in The Witcher 3, I swear The Witcher 3 shipped that way as well, and then they patched it.
Yeah.
In The Witcher 3, you come across books all the time, and yeah, they're grayed out once you've picked them up and read them. And in this, there were like 3 times where I came across an entry, which was, what's the stupid play about the seagull, and
yeah, I know
which I had read, and it would be grayed out. I saw it like 2 or 3 times. So it's not working or not finished, but but it is a pain in the fucking ass.
Yes, because at this point, I am not reading anything, because there's been like almost 10 times where I've read like 2 paragraphs, and I'm like, wait a second, I've already read this before, and I just forgot the title. So I just given up, because I keep reading shit I've already read before, and it's like looking for a needle in a haystack in case I just haven't read this one, but I've forgotten the title of like the 80th shard that I found out in the fucking world.
Yeah, and your shard menu doesn't... It's bugged. It's all the things are buggy right now, where it's like mark is red and then it unmarks as red, and it's like so you can't rely on any of it to know what you have and haven't read.
And I want to read it because it's good stuff.
It's really good stuff. Every like article is worth reading.
Yeah.
Every all the like hey choom, get fucked, those things aren't, but so many of the other things are worth reading. Like even the joke articles are worth reading, like you said about the play, the Militech play, the Search for the Last Seagull. It's like most games, most games always have something dumb like that in there, but in this one, it's hilarious and it is so stupid. I don't know if I have more notes. I mean, obviously, story stuff, but
I really like how this game has like its own evolved words in the English language, and you just have to kind of decipher them. It took me like 40 hours to understand what gonk meant. It's like, what is
you're
gonk?
like dumb.
It's like a fool.
Yeah, fool.
You idiot.
I do have a note. I was going to tie that to story stuff, but yeah, I think a lot of this game, the writing out of context is not very great. Out of context, I think in context in the world, the language used in the game is really interesting, because games, I mean, all media ignore language when it comes to writing, because they ignore the fact that language changes profoundly in like really short periods of time. 50 years ago, people did not sound like this. If people 50 years ago heard the things we would say to each other now, they'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with these idiots? And I'm a weirdo that's always like bothered by all the movies, where it's like the Lord of the Rings, maybe an extreme example, but like here's a historical epic, and they're all British thespians with pompous British accents. And it's like, no, they were speaking like an ancient dialect of Greek. I love the fact that what's the Mel Gibson Jesus Christ movie? Passion of the Christ. Like they used an almost unspoken language, and it's the language they spoke at the time, and everyone had to fucking learn it. And it's like, man, that is commitment. And with future stuff is like harder, because it's, let's speculate about where the English language is gonna go. And I think what this game does really well is actually does that well. It feels like they have created a way, a 2077 version of English that feels believable. And it feels like dirty and corrupted in the way that English has always been getting dirtier and more fucked up, right? The same way that all languages are. And there's like the filthiness of the world is translated into the language as well. Like everyone is like all these weird swear words and strings of curses, and the slang like choom and preem and nova and like all that stuff. It really all does fit together really well. And, you see the like grotesqueness of all the ads everywhere. And then you understand why Johnny Silverhand is like that rack-dicked motherfucker. And it's like, okay there, Keanu, Jesus Christ. But like it all fits weirdly well together.
Yeah, I like it.
I like it a lot. And it's like a lot of the slang terms are dumb and funny in the same way that they are today, where you look at the things people call each other today and you're like, what? You have people saying lol out loud unironically, right? in our world. And choom is a great one. Like choom makes a lot of sense to me. It's like, okay, people, chum, mate, everyone has a and then it's like choom, and then choomba I think is male, and choombata I think is female. Preem is great. Nova always cracks me up. Whenever they say, that's Nova, it's like, hell yeah.
There's a couple more that we're missing off the list.
Gonk, Scop. Scop is like shitty.
They obviously say zeroed a lot. He got zeroed.
Zeroed. I really like Clep. I like that they say you gotta Clep this thing. which is, kleptomaniac,
Yeah.
stealing. I really like that one. Got to klep this. Yeah, zeroed him.
Isn't there like a different like goodbye like later? I swear they say something else as well.
Maybe
I can't remember.
I swear a couple times he said like bigly. Like he's
yeah.
gonna regret that bigly.
Yeah, that rings a bell.
And like that is another one of the things where it's like, yeah, I can see someone saying that unironically in like 20 years, just because language is so weird. And yeah, I think they did a really good job with that stuff. Sort of related. One of the things that I was always really excited about that they talked about with this game is how you wouldn't be able to understand foreign languages unless A, you as the player understood the language, or B, you got a translator mod to understand the languages. And I was really disappointed with how that was implemented. It's a small thing, but they, in the main story, Judy just like uploads a translator mod to your head.
Yeah.
But that doesn't work unless you have subtitles turned on.
Oh.
And the subtitles, I don't know, I presume the subtitles are untranslated until you get that mod, but maybe the subtitles just always do translate. But I really liked, there are parts of the game early on, like when you're robbing Arasaka, the whole conversation between Saburo and Yorinobu is in Japanese, and I don't speak Japanese, and I presumed V doesn't speak Japanese, so there's like a 5-minute conversation that plays out, and I'm like, I have no fucking idea what they just said to each other.
I had the subtitles on, I could see what they were saying.
Right. And so they didn't apply that really at all. So that's unfortunate.
I was going to say, yeah, I heard what they were saying.
Because it would make sense to me that like, once that mod gets bought or installed, then maybe foreign language subtitles will show up and they'll get translated. Because the foreign subtitles do have like a little sort of effect to them, right? They start off, they're written out in Japanese and then they translate to English.
Like Jackie's words from his Latino background, I like translate.
Yeah, and like that stuff is well done, but it's just not. That's just one of those things where it just feels like they didn't have time to fully implement it. Because the result is if you play without subtitles, there is no way for you to understand what the foreigners are saying.
Oh damn!
Or what the foreign languages are being said. And it was when you're having to decipher Creole with the Voodoo Boys that Judy uploads a translation thing to you, and I was like, oh cool. And then they kept speaking Creole, and I was like, oh. And so when I would go into like a main quest with the Voodoo Boys, I would turn subtitles back on so that I could see what they were saying.
Yeah.
And the Creole one was interesting because there's a lot of French in there, and I was able to actually pick up quite a lot of
That's cool.
French words, and you can sort of piece together what they're saying. But I just wish it's such a neat idea to me of just being like, because there's a lot of foreign language in the game and in the peripheral and like in the world, and I just wish that they had properly implemented that. Because
that would be cool.
The English language stuff is, I think, really, really cool and really well done.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so should we transition properly into story here?
Yeah. Story time. I'm going to lead because we didn't preface this, but you have like finished everything, or the side quest, the main quest, and I'm at 72 hours last time I checked. I'm at the point of no return with the main quest. And I'm getting through the side quests. I kind of focused on the gigs a bit too much to start because I didn't really know there were side quests in the game when it started. Yeah. So I was just kind of clearing out. I think I cleared out all of Watson, Japantown before the side quest started for me because I didn't know there was, anything else to do. So I was preserving them anyway.
Yeah. I have finished. I don't know if I have a single quest that I haven't done. I mean, There might be one or two like tucked away that are hidden, sort of short little secret quests. But I don't know if there are. And I think I've done everything. No one's calling me anymore. It's like,
that sounds good.
The phone's gone dead. It's creepy.
So I'll start off with kind of an obvious one, kind of like the Night City compliment. The characters in this game are phenomenal.
Yeah.
They've done a really good job of using the kind of inevitable versatility of the city. It would just inevitably make varied people from all different sides of life with different implants and different fashion senses and different dispositions, and they do a really good job of making all these wild personalities and everyone really stands on their own, even people that aren't in the game for that long. All the voice work is amazing. Everyone does most people do a really good job. I will say I don't like V very much. I went with female V because I thought male V's voice acting was horrible. And I don't really like female V much more. I don't like either the voice work. I don't like the character. And I also don't really like Johnny Silverhand.
Really? Oh, that's fascinating.
I really just like their relationship to me. It just felt like I was out of sequence a lot of the time. They would have conversations where they seemed like they hated each other. Then it would like try and force this companionship with Johnny Silverhand, even though like we hadn't really talked that much. And then I would be Johnny and he would say to Kerry that things aren't going well with V. And I was like, what do you mean things aren't going well? We just had a really heartfelt moment in the oil fields. And it just felt like all out of whack. Like they were progressing towards this bonding moment between me and Johnny. And I felt like I did things in a weird order. And it felt like the dialogue was just like confused and off a lot of the time. Like I didn't know if me and Johnny were arguing or liking each other. And I just don't think Keanu did the best job. I don't think he did the worst job.
I was going to say quite different things to that. To those points. I would say, I mean, I went in, as I said, not expecting to like V at all.
Yeah.
And I think I played as male V, and I think he's solid. I think the voice work is solid. He's a little bit like a lot of characters, like main characters in games, where it's like 1 minute he's a fucking psycho lunatic and the next minute he's like, hugging and kissing the children of the city, and it's like sort of tonally all over the place. But I think he's a lot of it is based on expectations, and I went in not expecting to like him at all and wasn't super into it for a while, but I think I came around on V, and I ended up rather liking him.
Listen, I'm not at the end of the journey, so maybe, after 30 more
I
hours.
came to that point quite long before the end of that game.
I don't hate her. I'm just like, ugh. She's just like a bland, aggressive merc. I'm gonna get it done, just like everything. It's like, we get it. Take a day off, have a beer or something, for fuck's sake.
And then I was going to say, actually, I really liked the Johnny V relationship. I think it's actually, at least the way it played out for me, it felt, well, first of all, it's a lot more interesting and involved than I thought it was going to be. Like, Keanu is all over this fucking game.
Yeah, there's a lot of him.
Like, he is like, shows up in side quests and comments on things all the time and adds a lot of interesting context or perspective of like, here's this old fucking dude basically in your head being like, oh, the damn kids these days, basically, towards everything. And I think there's just, I thought that their relationship played out for me in a fairly natural way, where they were very hostile for a long while, and then slowly and fairly naturally it felt like they came to appreciate each other and understand each other in a way that felt good. And I was going to say, with regards to Keanu, I think he does actually a pretty good job, and with the caveat being that I don't think Keanu Reeves is not a good actor, and I hate to like burst anyone's bubble. Keanu Reeves has never been a good actor. I rewatched The Matrix recently, and every time I've ever seen him, he's not a good actor. He's a charismatic, likable human person, but as a screen presence, he does one thing, and it's read lines.
But he's supposed to have like this agenda against Arasaka. He nuked one of their buildings,
the worst parts for me for Keanu were when he would. There's like a few times where he goes on like a tirade about Arasaka and the corpos. It's like those parts were where I thought he was at his worst. But I think most of it is like him just doing these weird little like interjections about the world. And again, it's about expectations. I went in expecting a bad Keanu Reeves performance, because if he doesn't seem like he's doing a great acting job in movies, he surely won't in games. And I think all of the voice actors, all of the peripheral, like outside of V and Johnny, all the voice actors just chew through the dialogue like no one's, like they don't bat an eye, like they are pros.
Yeah.
Like all the voice acting is tremendous
It really
from the
is good,
rest of the cast, because there's a lot of weird dialogue and they just plow through it, doing amazing work. And I think I agree that V and Johnny are the worst, weakest aspects. But I went in expecting to not like either of them, and I was surprised at how much I liked the weird character of Johnny and the weird relationship between the two of them. And Johnny is like a bad guy. Like, he's not a likable person. It's an interesting role for Keanu Reeves, I think, is what I'm coming at it from. It's like Keanu Reeves plays a certain role, certain sort of heroic good guy in everything. You know, he's most famous for The Matrix and John Wick. I mean, John Wick, he's not necessarily a great human being, but he is still the quote-unquote good guy of the stories. And Johnny Silverhand is like a real scumbag.
But
in a way that
he didn't sell being a scumbag to me that well.
Yeah, he just sort of, I don't know. Yeah, it just sort of sounds like Keanu Reeves most of the time, which I was expecting, and I was surprised at how like he gets into some of that stuff. It suits, I don't know, him saying like all of his ridiculous swear words come off more naturally than I was expecting. Like I was surprised that it's a very un-Keanu like role. And I think he does a better job of it than I was expecting. But I was expecting very little.
Yeah. I think we're just going to have to diverge here, because I just didn't get it.
I think I've seen a lot of people...
He kind of got across like the lazy, don't give a shit rocker boy thing. But apart from that, like him being a extremist terrorist guy, I just didn't get that.
I agree. The extremist stuff doesn't... It just feels like something that people keep saying, and it doesn't feel like genuine.
Yeah.
Whereas, I think the parts that I liked most from him were just all of his like sleazy interjections, and then whenever he would be like, "These Arasaka cunts are the worst," and I'd be burn it all down, I'd be like, "Oh, okay, Keanu, let's just skip over this."
So I'm not saying it was all bad. I'm just saying,
I've definitely,
amongst,
it definitely seems like the part of the story stuff that is the most like you're either into it or you're not.
Yeah.
V and Johnny and the writing and the voice acting and all that. And I expected to not like it, and I was surprised by how much I relatively enjoyed that stuff. But the main plot of the game is not why you're there, really. It's like a 20-hour main story, and it's fine. I think it's fine. I think the A to B to C of it all is decent enough.
Yeah.
It's an interesting concept with the soul killer and shard stuff and Johnny in her head, like, and the personality overlap. Like, all these things are interesting, and I think they're done fine enough. I think the main story missions, there's some cool stuff in them. You know, you go and do some cool shit with the voodoo boy, like net running stuff. You get into a bit of that stuff. I don't remember most of it.
Yeah.
Partially because I played it over the course of 100 hours. The biggest problem for me with the main story is just the disconnect of urgency versus, and I mean, like, every game on
Poor
Earth has this
Takamura
problem.
waiting like 40 days in Tom's Diner.
Right, like every game has this problem to varying extents, really. The Witcher 3 had it as well, but this is like, you're dying.
Yeah,
you've got it, and then like Takamura's like, I'm waiting for you here. Come and meet me tonight. And I'm like, or the Hanako one. It's like, okay, the point of no return is go talk to Hanako Arasaka at Embers, and I'm like, I literally didn't pick up the main story for 40 hours.
Yeah.
And so that's why I look forward to replaying it, just like mostly beelining it through the main story, because I think it's, the main story is like a fun, decent enough action adventure linear game.
Yeah.
That's really what the main story is. And The endings are fine. They feel like Deus Ex Human Revolution, the first of the reboot, where you get to the end and you're like, in Human Revolution, you get to the end of the game and there's literally a room with 4 buttons in it. Literally a room with 4 buttons. And those are their 4 endings. And you make a hard save right before then and you go, I'm going to take this ending. And then you're like, I didn't like that one. I'm going to go for this ending. And this sort of feels like that in a way where it's like one of the many things in this game where it feels like they didn't really have enough time to like fully, I don't know, integrate all your choices into being like, this is the ending you've got because these are the choices you made. Like in The Witcher, you don't pick your ending. It's based on a couple of dozen conversations and story choices, and you get the ending. Whereas this game, it's very much like, take the red pill to get this ending, take the blue pill to get this ending, and it's like, okay, it's a little forced.
Mm-hmm.
But I was happy enough with the main story. But that's not why we're here.
Yes,
really.
You can put the main side quest chains, I think, up with the main quest. They are like the same quality in this game.
So that the separation is there's like the NCPD, side gigs, and then there's side quests.
Yes,
I would say, and then there are the main story. And the side quests, it's so weird because, like you said, your side quests, they don't open up for hours and hours. Mm-hmm. And I think they're tied to your street cred, but I'm not sure. Or main story missions. I'm honestly not sure.
I don't know what street cred does.
I have no idea. I think it unlocks more stuff in the shop. I don't know. I was level 50 in like 30 hours, so I don't fucking know. Yeah. But yeah, part of one of the many reasons why the first like 15 hours of this game I was not enjoying is because I didn't do a single side quest. There were none. And I was like,
I didn't even know if they were coming.
I didn't. Yeah, exactly. And I was bummed. I was like, okay, like another side gig. And it takes a long time for them to open up. But once they open up, they are really good.
Yes. I do have certain complaints about the main quest and side quests, but what matters when it comes to especially a CD Projekt game, and that's me basing it off one, which is The Witcher 3, is I want to be told small stories in this giant world. It's nice to have a grand, overall main quest, but that's not what makes the place feel alive, and it's not really what you remember the most when you come away from it. And I think Cyberpunk succeeds tremendously when it comes to telling these small, memorable stories with these really defined and great characters. The only negative I have is I was, maybe just because I think we all perceived this to be a bit more next-gen than it ended up being, I was expecting a little bit more gameplay variation. There is a couple of really good standout ones. The one in my head is Judy's final quest. There's one with Panam where you get in this like cool tank, but you don't really like, you do like a shooting range and then you get out of it. So unless you're Melvi and then something cool happens.
That was a wild scene.
Yeah.
I will say the tank does come back if you go with one of the others.
Okay.
Yeah. In a way that felt good to me.
Maybe I'm preemptively complaining about this, but there's just been a lot of quests where they're like, go here, talk, shoot, and then that's kind of it. And like we'll be saying this whole thing, it's very Bethesda. The Witcher was also the same. The Witcher didn't have these grand cinematic things until like Blood and Wine and later on.
Yeah.
But when you see the occasional quest, like Judy's quest, and you know that there is the possibility, I could have done with a bit more craziness. Like, it seems silly, but like they kept teasing space, and I don't know why I thought like maybe it would happen. Like, it was grandiose and stupid and naive, but I was like, maybe?
I won't say anything.
Oh my.
I don't want to get your hopes up, but like,
I
haven't seen space, I will say. Okay. I have not seen it, but I do believe that there is some ending stuff that can at least tease that or something. I have to imagine we go there in expansion though.
Yeah.
But yeah, The Witcher 3 was the same way in that like The Witcher 3's greatest problem probably is how every single quest is use your Witcher senses to go through this story. And this is similar to that in a lot of ways where it's like structurally the stories play out very similarly. But there are not a lot of them, I don't think. There's like the they are beefier. The side quests in this game are way beefier than they were in The Witcher.
Yeah.
The Witcher had like 400 small, like 5 to 20 minute stories.
These are really tied to people, these quests.
Yeah, this game has like a dozen quest lines.
Yeah.
And they're long. Like the river one with the serial killer. That I did that all in one sitting.
I've only just done I'm only 2 or 3 into that.
It's like 2 hour long.
I've been holding on to it because I've heard really good things about it.
It's really good. It's really good. And yeah, the side, there are not like a huge number of them, but they are lengthy, and yeah, they're tied to a character, and the character goes on a journey and you go with them, and they're all really good. They're really good.
What's important is good. That's what I would say.
Yes. Yeah. And like the character work is great. The relationships are great. The variety of character stuff is, and there's a lot of, they do a lot of, this was something that I was trying to figure out, and I only figured it out the other night. I was hoping for more sci-fi.
I have that that sentence written down.
Yeah. And so, but what I realized is that I'll let me go through it. I'll just go through my whole thought process here. So I was hoping for more sci-fi stuff, more explorations of, like politics and religion and morals with sci-fi intermingled with them. Like I said a couple days ago, I really liked the little side gig with the monks, the Buddhists, and you can eventually find them and talk to them about like how do Buddhists view cybernetics, and how does Buddhism view like the shard concept and all these things. And like I really liked that, and I was hoping for more of that. And that's more like Mass Effect. Mass Effect is all about that, where it's like, here's some sci-fi concepts, and then how do we integrate them into like politics and religion and morality tales. And this game is interesting because it's actually more like, this game is much more focused on just human drama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing at all. It's just a different approach to it. And everyone and every story in this game, like the sci-fi, to us it's sci-fi, to them they don't even think about it. Like the sci-fi to them is not, it's like, there's, I wanted to give an example with the serial killer thing, but I don't know how far you've gone into it.
Not far.
But like, so there's a couple where you like use a brain dance to like do some stuff, right?
Yeah.
And like to us, a brain dance is like, there's a lot of questions with the brain dance, right? Like this is a recording of the brain state, and like you're reliving other people's emotional states and experiences. And there's a few quests where you like use the brain dances for, maybe some things that are like maybe a little more gray, more morally speaking.
Don't they have like the XBDs, the X-rated stuff? Black
market? And there's the X, like, but like, I think you did of the weird Sinner Man quest where there's the guy on death row that's going to be executed.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And the interesting thing about, I'll use that as an example. That quest is interesting because you just don't question any of it, because it's to us playing it, we're like, this is so fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, this guy is recording a brain dance of his execution that he wants to share with the world. And all these people are, like, totally fine with that. And to us, it's so fucked up, but it's interesting.
It's entertainment to them.
To them, it's just another form of entertainment. Like, to us, this is the equivalent of them, like Twitter, It's just, like, no one thinks about it.
Going viral.
And I realized that approach is like, it's very deliberate, I think, in the entire game. The entire game is focused around just human drama, and no one in the game really cares about the sci-fi aspects of the world, which is, it's an interesting way to do it. And I think like I said, I would have liked more sci-fi integration, but I also think that this is a different and totally valid way of doing story stuff in here. And
there is some sprinkles of sci-fi as well. I just did the Jefferson side quest. I think that's the name. Jeff something.
Yeah, the Perales. Yeah.
I don't know if I've ended that chain though.
Is that the one where there's like a bunch of shit going on and they're
in their apartment.
And then you talk to him.
But I chose not to tell him what was going on because I was like, well, what's the point if they can,
Yeah, I'm gonna probably cut this because it's not relevant, but it's sort of like. But I wanted to bring it up with you because I knew you'd like it.
Okay.
So that is the end of the quest.
Oh.
That is not addressed again. And I thought that was weird, but then I looked into it, and there's a fucking Wikipedia page on the Cyberpunk 2077 Wikipedia page about Mr. Blue Eyes. And Mr. Blue Eyes is like the fucking G-Man of the world, and he is like seen all throughout that quest.
Ooh.
And he might be this like embodiment of rogue AIs that are like trying to influence the real world.
Cool.
And so that might be like...
I hope so.
I hope that's DLC stuff because... I was disappointed by that quest ending.
I was so intrigued by that was the one quest that gave me questions like how would you live your life if you couldn't trust your own memories?
I know, yeah. So I was really intrigued by that, and I wanted to know if there was more, and there wasn't, and I was bummed. And then 2 days later, I read about Mr. Blue Eyes, and he's watching you in that final conversation, and it's speculated that it's like some sort of AI entity or something.
I thought it was going to get to the point
things.
where you were going to find out that they were never even married in the first place and they've never even met each other. I was like, oh, this could be so good.
So, there are a few quests like that where you're like, oh man, they didn't quite finish this in a way that is sort of frustrating, but also very intriguing. And I really hope that they get into it in DLC because that is that quest in particular is probably one of the most interesting and weirdest things in the game because it is just so fucking creepy.
I do think I love the side quest, but I do think there's a bit of a quality deviance between quite a few of them. Like the final quest for Delamain was one of the coolest gameplay elements in the entire game when it came to side quests. There was weird platforming involving these robot cars. I was like, this is really creative and interesting. And the one we just talked about, which we might have cut for spoiler reasons, was the most intriguing when it came to sci-fi storytelling. And it was just a bit up and down. The one obviously consistent in the game was great character moments and character drama. But when it comes to gameplay, there's just these outliers, these really great moments. And I just wish it was a bit more consistent, just a bit.
Yeah. So I realized the perfect sort of comparison in the types of storytelling for this game is Mass Effect, if these characters existed in Mass Effect, you would, there's when you're robbing Saburo Arasaka, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking this the other night, if this was a Mass Effect game, you would have Saburo Arasaka, you would recruit him and he'd be part of your super elite squad, right? Because Mass Effect is super elitism, just everyone is the best of the best in the universe. And then you would talk to Arasaka about his fucking fucked up politics and his horrifying ideals and technology things that he's doing. But in this game, you're just some schlub that tries to rob him and gets fucked over.
Yeah.
That's the disconnect to me. And I like both approaches, and I would have liked more of the Mass Effect style, more of Mordin Solus, let me talk to Mordin about the morality of the genocide and things like that. I would have liked more of that and more of weird sci-fi stuff. But what we got is not bad. It's just different, and it wasn't what I was expecting. And it all works well because the characterizations are so good.
Yeah.
There were a dozen tremendous, memorable characters in this game, and they're all wonderful. I think maybe the biggest complaint I have with the side stuff is just it's a really small thing, but it's just the pacing out of things is too fast. So you do a Pan Am quest, and then she's like, I'll contact you in a couple days. And you drive 3 minutes away, and she texts you and she's like, I got another quest for you. Come back.
Yeah.
It's whoa, let me turn this vehicle around.
And it's Pan Am, so you turn immediately.
And it's Pan Am. So, and the most jarring for me was Judy at the end of her quest line for male V, at least, because you don't become lovers.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how it goes for female V, but you're friends, you're chooms. And she decides to leave the city.
Oh, does she really?
Oh, okay. So this is okay. So this is, yeah. So she decides that she fucking hates Night City.
Yeah, we had that conversation, but she's still. Oh, that makes so much sense. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So she leaves Night City and goes basically on a road trip. Right. She goes up to visit her. I think she mentions her grandparents live in Seattle and things like that. And she's like, I'm taking my van and I'm going on a road trip to find myself. Basically, I'm like, great, you do that. Love you. Bye. And she gives you you get access to her apartment, which you get for a few people. You have access to their apartments. I don't really know what that does. You can't sleep in their beds or anything.
Yeah, it's a bit underutilized, honestly.
Yeah. And so she says, you've got access to my apartment. So I leave I finish off that lovely final quest with her. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to go check out Judy's apartment. Drive over there, pull up to the apartment, walk in. Oh my God, Judy, what are you doing here?
Oh.
On the way to seeing her, she texts me a picture saying, look, I'm in Portland, Oregon. Look at the trees. And then I walk in and she's like, oh, hey, V. And I'm like, And then you can talk to her and you're like, so what's life like outside of Night City? The implication is that she has come back for a visit.
Oh, right.
But the span of 5 minutes have passed, and 2 minutes prior, she was in Portland, and now she's back in Night City. And just, again, it's one of those things where it's just like, if they had another year, they obviously would have spaced this out.
Yeah,
and they would have paced it out properly.
Is definitely not finished. Because if you're in a relationship with her, she sends you like consistent texts and updates about doing things, and you can go to her apartment and she never has any like context for those text messages. There's never any relevant conversation. She even like made me a gun, which is the shotgun I was talking about. And I went and picked up the shotgun and I talked to her, and you can't like say anything about the gun. It's just like, it's not done, that stuff.
Yeah. And it's a shame because it's just a small thing that just sort of lets down the really, really good character stuff that's there.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the theme of Cyberpunk, honestly. It's like little things just letting down the momentum they build up on occasion. Yeah.
Yeah. But like I said, I went in, I was hoping that the story stuff would be good, and it took a while, but the side quest stuff that's there is really, really good and very memorable. Some great quests. I was going to say one of the other ways that it resembles a Bethesda game, especially Fallout 4, we were talking, the RPG sides of the gameplay are really good. I think the RPG parts of the story stuff here are pretty non-existent. Well, not non-existent, but light. Like this reminds me a lot of Fallout 4, where every answer was yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Just, except in Fallout 4, all the writing was so fucking boring.
Yeah.
Whereas in this game, all the writing is good. All the characters are good. The story stuff is good. It's just that it doesn't feel like you have much sway in it. There was one side encounter with the nomads in the city where they're trying to make a deal with Maelstrom. And it's a little side quest. And
oh yeah, remember that.
Yeah, and I saved right before it and walked in and we got in a gunfight and I died.
I talked out of that one.
And then I reloaded the save and talked my way out of it. And the dialogue from the other characters was exactly the same, even though I picked completely different dialogue options from me. And the first time I did it, the dialogue from the nomads felt weird. It felt like I had said something, and then when I did all the talking my way through it, I said the thing that made sense for them to have that response. There's a few times where especially if you reload a save, you really see.
Oh, it's like that Fallout 4 mod that unveils what actually is going to be said, and it's all the same.
Right, and I think people have started to realize that is in a lot of ways the case for this, and it doesn't bother me so much because the writing is good.
Yeah.
It bothers me more in a Fallout where it's so bland and milquetoast, but in this it's less of a problem. And
so you're just reminding me, that was one of when I did that gig or side activity or whatever you call it. I can't remember the name of the two Aldecados or whatever their nomad tribe's called. I can't remember the name of those two guys, but as I was leaving, they ran me over in their car. They really crushed the shit out of me as well.
Some of the jank is harmless.
Oh god, that made me laugh.
Yeah, some of the jank is
the
just
AI driving is horrendous.
Oh god, it's so weird. Yeah. But I think the reason people are so disappointed by those RPG aspects of it is because you know, this is an IP that's based on a pen and paper RPG where it's all about the role playing.
There was definitely some, like, I don't know if I want to say misleading or misinterpretations of where the game was going. I think people just expected something different and expected more in a lot of areas. And I don't know whose fault that is, but it definitely happened.
Yeah. I think people rightly expected to be much more of a role-playing game.
Yeah.
And in reality, it's more of an action-adventure game with, you know, some dialogue choices. And
did you see the thing where someone found that they changed their Twitter bio to reflect that?
Right.
That was,
But they did that like 3 weeks ago. You know, if they had done that a year and a half ago, that would have been fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, and I mean, it's impossible to make that game, right?
Mm-hmm.
You cannot make a game that is at the production value scale of this and have it be like Divinity, you know, Divinity Original Sin, where it's just like every life path is different, every choice, like it's and insane role playing, and every character can die. Like it's just not really feasible. Mm-hmm. But I think, you know, yeah, there are a lot of places where they could have, let's say, marketed it a little more straightforwardly and honestly. Yeah. I think we benefited from not paying attention to that stuff. Or at least I did. I didn't pay much attention to any of that stuff, and so I wasn't, like, I did not know what to expect from Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I really didn't. And I ended up liking most parts of it, even though it is also clearly needed another year. And it is nowhere near what it could have been, but it is still, I still really like it.
Yeah.
It's such a strange release. I mean, look at us. We've been talking for 3.5 hours.
It is probably the strangest release that I can ever think of. You have this crazy clash of us actually getting to play the game while on the sidelines there are people just having the worst time and playing an absolute shambles version of the game. It's released too early, but it's not like bad enough to just write it off and put it in the trash. There's so many great moments. I think I saw a comment or a quote from someone saying Cyberpunk is a great game screaming to get out, and I was like, yeah.
Yes, yeah, 100%.
That
100%.
really feels like right on the money.
Absolutely.
Like it's in there somewhere.
It feels like an early access game in the way that, like, I know Baldur's Gate 3 is in early access right now, and I see everyone saying, like, this game is going to be incredible when it's done. And of course it will be. Divinity Original Sin 2 is incredible. And I know that I could play Baldur's Gate 3 right now and probably have a pretty good time with it and be like, wow, there's a lot of good shit in here. But it's an early access game. So in a year when it's out of early access, I know I'll play it and it'll be amazing. And this feels like that, where it's just like it needed that extra year of probably of early access, honestly, of people playing it.
We talked about this in the Discord. I think AAA needs to stop being cowards and just accept early access as a tag.
And I hope that this kerfuffle leads to some sort of change in some capacity, because this really, Cyberpunk really was the perfect storm of the last 10 years of AAA bad practice come to life. And it feels like it was inevitably going to happen, where the hype and the messiness matched up, you know, and created this explosion. Because there have been a lot of messy games. There have been messier AAA games, but the hype wasn't there, right? Like, Fallout 76 wasn't the most hyped game of the last 5 years. It wasn't announced a decade ago. You know, it was like a 6-month turnaround. No Man's Sky was close, but you could excuse it because 12 people made it. Whereas this is just the perfect storm of, it was announced when I was 18, like fucking 20 years ago in 2012, before The Witcher 3 was even announced.
Yeah.
Then you have The Witcher 3 come out, create a phenomenon, and then they spend 5 years hyping the game up, and the narrative of like, oh, the game's been in development for 8 years, how is this so unfinished? And I mean, you know, we know differently, but like this perfect storm of hype, bad business practice, bad policies on like Sony and Microsoft, and bad review policies on the game reviewer sides, shadiness from CD Projekt, people being desperate for the game to release, 2020 happening. Like, you have to remember, there's they've spent the last 9 months of this game all working from home.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. I don't envy that at all.
No.
And it's just a perfect storm to create a huge clusterfuck. And I hope that something beneficial comes out of it. I hope that, maybe AAA starts getting early access. I would be fine with that.
Just be honest about it, though. That's all it is. It's just an honesty sticker.
Exactly. Because most of these games are early access nowadays.
And it keeps happening. There's obviously something going on in higher production where they just can't quite meet the standard they need to before releasing it for money. So just slap a sticker on it and be honest that you're going to patch it and get it to the point it needs to be later once you've taken our money. Just be honest about it.
Yeah, and like community feedback has clearly been hugely beneficial for a lot of these games. You know, look at the indie games that came out of early access this year that were incredible. Mm-hmm. Like Risk of Rain and Hades and
Deep Rock.
You know, there's a few Deep Rock Galactic. Like they spent years in early access. Mm-hmm. They did like an insane amount of work. And if you look at interviews with them, they're like, oh my God, early access was incredible. Like it is a huge part of why the game is as good as it is. And, you look at these AAA games, I'll include No Man's Sky. Look at No Man's Sky. It spent 5 years in early access and now it's good. Fallout, people are starting to like Fallout 76.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I looked at Mass Effect Andromeda on Steam the other day and it has a very positive overall rating. So people can like anything. Anything can be redeemed, it seems.
Yeah.
And if you put an early access tag on it, you get like literally it solves every single problem they have right now.
Yeah, literally. It's two words, and you set up the relationship of this game isn't finished, but you can play it and buy it now in its early stage.
It's so simple.
It's like a free pass. Like people on Steam have been exploiting it for years.
It's crazy. You literally say Cyberpunk. It's been a difficult development. We're still working on it, but we want people to get their hands on it. We know people have been waiting 8 fucking years for this thing.
Yeah.
Okay, we're releasing it in early access.
God, yeah.
We're even gonna release it in early access on the consoles, but you've got to realize it is bad right now on the consoles and on PC. Like we're working on it. We've got a lot of stuff to do still, and it would solve every single problem. Yeah. And then in a year or in a year and a half, when the expansions are out, they do their free DLC, they patch it to high hell and back. In 2022, you'll probably open up Steam, click on Cyberpunk, and it'll be at overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have tanked their reputation, and now they have to spend the next 4 years between now and the next Witcher game. They have to spend these next 4 years working their ass off to get people to trust them again.
Yeah. Just tell the truth, man. People love it. Just tell the truth.
And that's what they built their whole platform on.
I know. It's crazy, man. It's
go back to that tweet where they're just remember years ago, they're like, it was some reply, the CEO replied to someone using the Witcher account. They were like, with Cyberpunk, think nothing less than The Witcher 3. No bullshit, no money grabbing, no multiplayer.
You pay for what you get, they said.
Oh, man. It's so frustrating because Cyberpunk, there's so much good stuff in Cyberpunk.
It's weird. I feel I don't know, these video game companies just don't seem to value PR or something else is going on. PR is just, it's a gold mine. It's a treasure trove.
AAA, I mean, it seems like I'm amazed that any AAA game ever gets made at this point, really, when you think of just how many people, the credits for Cyberpunk are, oh my God. And I mean, you hear about Red Dead, 2,000 people worked on Red Dead. It took 8 years of active development. How did that game come out? How does any of these games come out? And then this year alone, I'm amazed that a single video game got released after March of this year. It's a miracle that people have been able to ship products when everyone in a collaborative creative medium, everyone is isolated from each other and they can't talk to each other and they have to work from home. It's a nightmare. But you solve so many problems by just saying, Halo Infinite, it's early access right now.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like they just, AAA, it's like they still need that like 10 million day one sold, and they want the money now.
Did you really think they weren't confident about Cyberpunk selling? It's Cyberpunk, man.
No, I mean, it sold obscenely well.
And it's not like
even
they're
with the
doing
refunds.
like it's not like EA where they're making like a subpar thing, or Ubisoft. Like they're making something truly great.
Like Cyberpunk is a fucking huge, enormous game, but like it was always going to sell well. But you could have just solved so much by just saying, "Yeah, man, we need more time, but you're welcome to come and join us for this ride." Like we've got most of the story stuff is here. It's so frustrating.
Could have done the blogs like Bungie do, the transparency. People
the
would have loved it.
Weekly updates. Yeah, like. Oh man!
Because if they were going bankrupt, like you said, the sales still would have been enough from this little first wave.
And they've already and it's frustrating because like they went for the shadiest, most gross corpo scum type route, and it paid off for them. Okay, their PR is a disaster, but their earnings call last week with refunds, they've sold 13 million copies of the game already, and they fully recouped development costs.
Yeah, I mean the damage to like the value of the company is pretty tremendous, though.
Yeah, I think the next 6 to 12 months are very important for them, and I would like to think that the game will, that the right paths will be taken, because. I don't know, when you have like BBC and like economic newspapers talking about your company on fire and it's a video game thing, it's like mainstream in a way that is bad. Like the last time this happened was the loot boxes became illegal because of Battlefront was so bad, Like it's that type of catastrophe.
I can't believe it was Cyberpunk, man. Of all the things, I thought it was going to be the Avengers. I really thought it was going to be the Avengers.
This was a year with like, it would have been so nice to just end the year with a game that everyone was just like wowed by.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating because like, look at this. We spent 4 hours talking about this game.
With how this year's gone, we really should have just guessed that it was going to be Cyberpunk that was a disaster. How did we not see it coming?
I know, but it's so sad because also like here we are, we're part of this weird like elite group that has been able to play like the closest thing to the vision that's there, and there's so much good stuff there. And we're able to appreciate so many parts of it, and so many parts of it are just like staggering. The artistry and the scale and the care, but then it's just undermined left and right by just not enough time. And I feel so bad for the developers because they the passion is so apparent throughout the game, and it's just tragic.
Definitely the weirdest review we've probably ever done. There's just so many weird contrasts. You don't usually talk about like horrible corporate greed and misdeception and also talk about a game being like a masterpiece in certain areas. They don't go together like that. That just doesn't happen.
And you don't get these weird clashes of like a futuristic game level creation artistry like the world with this weird clash of like things that were done better in Fallout 3, Like,
it's so weird.
It is so bizarre. Yeah, normally we're talking about corporate greed with EA, and it's like, EA hasn't made for me. EA has not made a good game in like 9 years.
Yeah.
Like their last great game was when did Dead Space 2 come out? 2011, I think.
I think so.
And then Mass Effect 3 is a flawed clusterfuck, but I still love it. But it's not there, and you're used to talking and like Activision, like. Oh my God, the greed from them is disgusting. And you look at Blackout and it's like, wow, did they ever just cobble this together? And look at how they're exploiting modern warfare to get people to buy Blackout or Black Ops or whatever the fuck it's called. But then here you're talking about corporate greed, and it's like, this is the best made world with some incredible storytelling and character work. And it's like a fun action RPG. It's so frustrating.
It's just insane, man. You could
I
never
in a
with
million
video
years
games
would have predicted it.
You never know what's coming.
And I will say I enjoy that part of gaming.
You never
where it's
know
just
what's
like,
gonna happen.
I have no idea what will happen tomorrow with gaming.
Yeah, you never know.
Like, tomorrow they could say, no, we're past the point of this, but there was like a couple of days there where I was like, if they said, we are pulling Cyberpunk from sale worldwide on all storefronts, I would have believed it. It wouldn't have been far-fetched. Like, after Sony pulled it, I was half expecting them on like Saturday to be like, we're suspending all sales of the game.
Because even the PC requirements are extremely demanding.
Yeah. They're insane.
Like, you have to have like you said earlier, you have to have a graphics card which doesn't exist right now.
Pretty much. Yeah, unless you're playing, well, it depends. Like, I played more than half the game on a TV, and I was running, it was with DLSS, the magic of DLSS, and especially at 4K. Like, you're getting 4K image quality, and I was playing it close to 60 FPS. With a controller, I don't really feel it. So, like, maybe the 3090 can maybe just barely play it at peak premium settings. But that's a expensive graphics card. And no one should buy it.
Yeah. Like, I hit 30 frames on a 3080 at points. Like, it's just...
I hit like 35, 36 frames once or twice on my 3090.
That's insane, man. That's insane.
But to be fair, like, I'm playing it at ultra wide 1440p, and I've got everything is maxed out. Like, I could turn down one setting and get, But yeah, that is with DLSS balanced. Yeah. But like, it's not like, like we said,
it's a 3090,
it looks.
Dude.
I know.
Come on.
I was not expecting it to be as.
That thing can split atoms, I think.
I think so. Yeah, it can run Doom at like 8K, 120 FPS.
Oh my god.
But yeah, I can't quit. I can't quit it yet, though. That's the weird thing. Like, I played 100 hours of it, and then I beat it, and I've spent the last couple of days like booting games up, and I just keep thinking about Cyberpunk. And then I booted Cyberpunk last night and spent like another hour just wandering around, and I'm like, do I want to just like immediately replay it like with a corpo?
I think one thing we haven't said in the chat, but we said in the Discord, it was just nice to have it there. It's been such a sparse year that just having this long, lengthy game was just a real nice treat. And even though I would say maybe some aspects of the gigs and the police scanner activities, at points I thought the quantity was maybe a bit off and they could have just made some of them a bit more special. I kind of just liked having these grindy little activities. I liked the loot game and the shooting enough to just keep going. And I don't know if I would change it now at this point, just because I got to play 100 hours of a AAA product. At points it was AAA anyway.
But see, this is why I kept saying this is a Eurojank game in a lot of ways, because to me, Eurojank is a term of endearment, and it's a term that I would use to describe something that is reaching a little bit further than it can.
There's definitely some moments that feel pretty
and there's
damn
definitely
Eurojank.
some of that in this game. Like there's definitely some Witcher 2-y stuff in this game where you're like, they're really going for it, and they're getting there.
Yeah.
And then they're also not, but I mean, the jank part is the true part for sure.
Yeah, jank and unfinished. Like there was a couple of we kind of skipped over some like elements of the main quest, but there was.
Sure, we skipped over about a million things.
There was certain moments in the main quest which felt like they should have been a bit more cinematic than they were. Like there's a quest where you go through the Black Wall, and I didn't even know we'd gone through it. You're just kind of on the other end, and I'm like, oh. I thought that was going to be a bit more exciting.
Yeah, I really liked the whole Voodoo Boy thing, but it was... Voodoo Boys in the Pacifica as a whole, I think, is something they should really expand into.
That area is so cool.
The area is fascinating, and them as a faction are fascinating as well.
Yeah.
And I really liked that mission, but it was still just not quite nailed it with the Black Wall.
And I don't know how
I really
it was
liked
for
meeting
you.
the Netwatch guy. He was really interesting.
Yeah, but there was a couple more moments. Like, I don't know how it played out for you, because who knows, like, how, for each person, how it plays out. But, like, when you stop the train with Pan Am, it was just a little bit clumsy and not.
Oh, there was no sound effect when the train collided with everything.
Yeah, it just wasn't that cool, and I thought it was going to be really cool.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. It reminded me of like, I'm trying to think. Like, I don't know. It was sort of Metro-y a little bit, especially the train collision, because I'm thinking about replaying Metro, and I played like an hour of it the other night, and I was reminded of like how bad the sound design is in Metro Exodus, and that feeling came up with the Pan Am thing, where it's like, oh yeah, we're chasing the train and the train's barreling, and then it collides and there was no sound effects at all.
Yeah.
And I was like, ow.
There's a lot of moments like that in the game where you're like, oh.
And like in a year, I'm sure the sound effects will be there and it'll be cooler. And
there are some missions that really strike the right spot. And the fire lights, like the one, I don't know like how much we're spoiling by giving these little plot summaries, but the one with Pan Am where you bring down the cruiser, that was fucking cool.
That was good. I was having my subtitle issue a lot there, and that was actually during my period where I was like getting the most bugs, so actually that part was really undermined for me. But like,
I'm sure you had like a side quest which everything just worked.
Yeah. There's there's a sequence with Johnny where you finally hear the Rebel Path song that I used in the beauty video, the bumpin' one.
Yeah.
That sequence is pretty good. It's pretty good. You've got like, it's sort of like, I don't know, kind of gave me a little No Russian vibe a little bit with like your cool squad in the elevator. I don't think you've done that mission yet though. It's like a storming Arasaka flashback mission.
I think so.
Maybe you have done it. I don't know. It was just like, yeah, the music's cool. Look at these cool characters. I've got this fucking sick gun.
Yeah, I think I've done that where you're trying to rescue the girl in the chair. Right?
Yes, right. Yeah, you're trying to rescue Alt. Yeah. But there's just, lots of good little moments in the quests that are just like, this is cool. Like the Netwatch guy in the Voodoo mission board, where they've got like an old Marlon Brando movie playing on the movie screen behind him, and it's just like cinematography wise, just so
good. Yeah, that was so cool.
I sent a screenshot of that one. It's just there's a lot of good moments in the game where you're like, this game is so cool.
I think a nice way to like summarize Cyberpunk, if we're going towards the conclusion, is I remember when we reviewed or talked about Fallout 76, and that game was also really focused on the bugs and the glitches, just because it's like good YouTube clickbait. It's silly to look at. But one thing that people weren't talking about, that game was just fucked at the core. Like
every part of it was terrible.
Like it just didn't make sense from like the gameplay format. It's like, how is this going to work? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And it was the same with Mass Effect Andromeda. Everyone was focused on the bugs, but the writing in that game is terrible.
And Cyberpunk is not the same at all. It's Cyberpunk's like this outlier where what's in there is good, but it's just covered in like this unfortunately ugly coat of paint, and like it just hasn't gone well for a lot of people. So if you haven't bought it yet, and maybe you're on the hate train, this game will be good. It really will be good.
No one should buy, like, if I'm not going to review this game because we just talked about it for 4 hours. But like, if I was going to review it, I would say, as a summary, right now, it's probably like a 3-star game because of all of the things that are unfinished, but also no one should buy it right now. Don't buy it right now. Mm-hmm. In 6 months, when it's polished, it'll be like a 4-star game. And I would recommend people buy it. In like a year and a half, when it's gotten hopefully all the quality of life changes, and I can throw some cool mods in, it'll be like a 5-star experience for me. Mm-hmm. Don't buy it right now. Just wait. Just give it 6 months. Give it till like March, and then it'll at least be in a much less buggy state. But I think ideally, like we said to Dawson, like you waited this long, just give it another 2 years. Play the definitive edition in 2022 when you have a killer graphics card as well. Yeah. And it'll be amazing.
If I was going to like push some real optimism on people, I think there's still a lot of reasons to still be excited about Cyberpunk for the future. We can't pretend and forget that it didn't fall on its face in a pretty embarrassing way. But I'm still excited for the future of Cyberpunk. I'm really interested to see.
Oh my god, I'm desperate.
I'd love to see a support content roadmap from those guys, just to see what they're going to focus on first, what's going to actually come up as a real addition rather than just tweaking, patching, smoothing things out. Like my main complaint about activities, like, is it even planned? Is that stuff coming out? Like, what order they're going to do things in? I think to appease the people, that would really help. One of those nice infographics that come out on Twitter. Just release one of those. Obviously, the first step is to make it playable. But, like, give a nice little content roadmap. I want to know what they're going to do, because they can build on that thing so much.
We're recording this literally 3 weeks to the day since it came out. So they can take a little more time to figure out what their plans are for this game, because it's only been out for 3 weeks.
So they're in red alert over there right now.
Yeah, red alert for now is just get it fixed.
Yeah.
As much as possible. And they said they have a big... It's crazy that they were able to immediately say, like, we have a big patch for January and a big one for February. And it's like, oh, so you knew.
They knew.
You knew what your timeline was for these patches as well. I think my ending thoughts on Cyberpunk is that it was frustrating and disappointing, and I couldn't stop playing it.
Yeah.
I had largely a fantastic time with it. I want to keep playing it, and I'm already looking forward to whatever DLC and expansions come out.
Me too.
Yeah, game discussion this year has been atrocious, because people have seemingly abandoned the idea of nuance and the fact that, I can like a game for what it is and not what it isn't, and I can like a game that has a lot of problems. Like, I would take Cyberpunk over every fucking open world game that I've played for the last couple of years. Like, I would take Cyberpunk over all the Assassin's Creed games. Over Ghost of Tsushima, over Last of Us, over so many of these games, because there's just so much more there that I like. And it's actually
fun to play. It's really fun
to play.
I would miss that shooting when I've done everything. I really like it.
Yeah, and it is also like an interestingly messy game as well, and not like Cyberpunk or like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, where you're just like, oh my god, they farted out another one of these fucking games. Yeah, it's a 4-hour long discussion about one video game. It's crazy.
There's a lot.
What a wild thing.
Yeah, wow, that was fucking crazy.
Yeah. So that's their review.
Fucking hell, man. 4 hours. It didn't feel like 4 hours.
No, it didn't. The sun is setting here already. You called it like 10:30, and now it's 3 p.m. and it's dark out.
Yeah, I can't be bothered to talk about PlayStation stuff right now.
God, no. We'll do that another day.